Chapter 859. In the Northern Wei Empire, people often heard that Kong Jianba had an invincible body. However, very few people were able to see him in action, so people did not have a concrete idea of what he was talking about. Today, they finally understood what it meant to have an invincible body. Kong Jianba had only used one punch and two punches to end the previous two battles, letting everyone know how terrifying his strength was. Now that they saw how terrifying his defense was, such a person was too abnormal. Ling Shiqi's punch was not weak. Wu Changyu's expression changed when he saw this punch because if he were to face it, he would not be able to withstand it at all. However, this punch did not even shake Kong Jianba's mountain seal. It was clear that Kong Jianba's defense was rare in the world. What was even more abnormal was that even if you hit him, you would not be able to move him. If he hit you, you would either die or be crippled. How could you fight him? This was the strength of a body cultivator. The eyes of many disciples of the Heavenly Dipper sect lit up. Your body is quite strong. It's a pity that you did not enter my Heavenly Dipper sect. Otherwise, I would definitely nurture you. Are you using Xiahou Ba's 3 forms of the Tyrant Fist? He was also a body cultivator, but unfortunately, he took the wrong path. Kong Jianba spoke in the tone of a senior talking to a junior. It was as if Xiahou Ba, who was guarding a region, was nothing in his eyes. Ling Shiqi held the 1000 Illusion Dao sword and split it into 4. The sword Dao of the 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire appeared. At the same time, the surrounding mountain range moved horizontally, flames surged, waves surged, and gales rose everywhere. The sharp sword intent and the violent power of the 4 elements surrounded and suppressed Kong Jianba. This time, Kong Jianba remained motionless. He only let out a muffled sound from his mouth. This sound seemed to have triggered some strange power, causing countless lights to appear around his body. All the sword chi and various other powers melted away like clay oxen entering the sea, disappearing without a trace. As expected, it's still not enough. Ling Shiqi sighed inwardly. In fact, after the first attack, he had already noticed that Kong Jianba was not only physically strong. Although the human body had infinite possibilities, it was increasingly difficult to increase the strength of the body towards the end. Ling Shiqi himself had also cultivated a body refining technique, but it had been a long time since he had made any progress. The reason why Kong Jianba's body was so powerful was because Ling Shiqi had sensed a faint trace of the law of earth. The law of weight within the law of earth. He could attack if he advanced, and defend if he retreated. This meant that Kong Jianba had actually begun to touch the edge of the metaphysical realm. Therefore, Ling Shiqi knew very well that if he did not use the power of law, he would not be able to defeat Kong Jianba. If this was just a pure competition, it wouldn't be a big deal for him to reveal some of his moves. However, he didn't know how many pairs of eyes were watching him from behind, so he couldn't reveal too much of his strength. However, Ling Shiqi's fighting spirit surged. Where could he find such a good human punching bag? A wisp of crimson gold flame suddenly erupted from Ling Shiqi's body. This was the crimson gold earth dragon flame, which everyone already knew. However, a bolt of lightning came crashing down from the 9 heavens, merging with the crimson gold earth dragon flames to form a thunder flame dragon that was hundreds of feet long. That's the flaming thunderbolt Yang Manual. The old man exclaimed. Xian Haoying and Shui Liuli also stood up, their surprise no less than the old man's. The flaming thunderbolt Yang Manual was a cultivation technique that only the members of the Thunderbolt dynasty's royal family could cultivate. Only those with extraordinary talent were qualified to cultivate it. The number of members of the royal family who cultivated this cultivation technique could be counted on one hand. How did Ling Shiqi obtain this cultivation technique? Of course, he obtained this cultivation technique from his soul clone, Lei Haoyan. Ling Shiqi possessed the crimson gold earth dragon flame, so cultivating this cultivation technique was twice the result with half the effort. He could also fully unleash the power of the crimson gold earth dragon flame. A dragon's roar reverberated throughout the world as the thunder flame dragon descended with a terrifying killing intent. Unfortunately, the thunder flame dragon rushed into the strange brilliance, but it still did not cause any ripples. Leng Shiqi pointed out a finger, and a dreamlike bubble appeared. Just one look at it would cause one to unconsciously become immersed in it. Grand Dream Thousand Autumn Finger. In the end, those beautiful bubbles were dissolved by the light like bubbles. Is that enough? What's the point if you can't even break through my defensive divine light? Kong Jianba said coldly. Leng Shiqi did not say a word. His 4 arms formed seals at the same time, and the 4 elements' true spirits appeared. Waves of origin energy fluctuated, and the 4 elements formation diagram slowly formed. Seeing this, Kong Jianba's expression finally became somewhat serious. The 4 elements formation diagram slowly descended, causing the origin energy in this world to boil. Other than the people of the Thunderbolt dynasty, the other experts were all astonished. The 4 elements formation diagram actually contained the power of heaven and earth. For a spirit cultivator at the unity of heaven and man stage to be able to comprehend such a level of power, it was simply overturning their previous knowledge. Buzz. The 4 elements formation diagram and the divine light intertwined, causing the illusory space to violently tremble a few times. Following a soft sound, Kong Jianba's defensive divine light was finally broken. But even so, the power of the 4 elements formation diagram was almost exhausted. The remaining power was not even enough to tickle Kong Jianba. Following that, palm techniques, fist techniques, spear techniques, seal techniques. Leng Shiqi used all the spiritual techniques that he was proficient in, but in the end, he could not even force Kong Jianba to take a step back. The divine light behind Leng Shiqi shone brightly, and the power of his divine spirit was pushed to the extreme. The golden power of his divine spirit dyed half the sky. His 6 arms turned into a series of afterimages, countless hand seals flew, and streaks of spirit arts whistled out. In the sky, stars dotted the sky, and on the ground, several arrays appeared, and endless streams of light shuttled back and forth. In an instant, everyone in the illusory space could only see spells that blotted out the sky and covered the sun. Many people directly covered their mouths to prevent themselves from crying out. Not to mention anything else, just this array of attacks made people feel as if it was the end of the world. Of course, in the eyes of the experts, they could see that most of the spells were low to mid-grade spiritual techniques, and there was no threat at all. They were also very shocked, and they were surprised that they suddenly realized that Leng Shiqi seemed to know everything. Swordsmanship, illusions, body refinement, and spells were all proficient. As the saying went, greedy but not proficient. In fact, the higher one's cultivation level, the more one would want to specialize in a certain type of power. For example, the old man specialized in thunder techniques, and Xue Liuli was a water cultivator. Another example was Leng Shiqi's opponent at the moment, an expert who had cultivated his body refinement to the extreme, Kong Jianba. While everyone was shocked, they were also puzzled. How could Leng Shiqi have so many talents, and how could he have so much time to cultivate? One had to know that it took a lot of time to cultivate a certain high-level spiritual technique, and Leng Shiqi had displayed countless spiritual techniques so far. Was he still human? However, when the countless spells landed on Kong Jianba's body, they still could not break through his physical defense. Kong Jianba's heart was in turmoil, but as time passed, he became impatient. This was because he saw that Leng Shiqi seemed to have the intention of pestering him, and used all his spiritual techniques, as if he was determined to make him suffer. Kong Jianba saw that Leng Shiqi was about to run out of tricks, and was about to find an opportunity to counterattack to end this boring battle. However, at some point, Leng Shiqi's eyes became misty, and the spells that filled the sky were only left with the 5 elements. A mysterious aura pervaded his body, and with a wave of his hands, he activated the 5 elements in the sky, stirring up heaven and earth. In an instant, 5 huge rings of different colors condensed in midair, and slowly rotated. Chapter 860. The moment the 5 rings were formed, all the energy within a few hundred miles of the arena surged madly. Spiritual qi, elemental energy, origin energy, and even a trace of the laws of heaven and earth. Kong Jianba actually felt a great threat at this moment. He stomped his feet, and an earth dragon flipped over. The vigorous earth energy stirred up the illusion realm. He could not sit and watch Leng Shiqi complete this spiritual technique. Otherwise, he might really lose. Leng Shiqi's eyes shone brightly as he threw a bracelet into the air. It was the bracelet of the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven. The people from the Thunderblaze dynasty immediately recognized it. They were even more puzzled. Why would the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven be in Leng Shiqi's hands? However, something that shocked and horrified these people immediately happened. Leng Shiqi clenched his fist, and the bracelet shattered. 5 streams of colorful light scattered, and a heart-palpitating energy fluctuation trembled. Xian Haoying, old man, and the others almost vomited blood. Leng Shiqi actually destroyed the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven. That was the treasure of the Thunderblaze dynasty. There were only a few treasures that could form their own worlds in the entire Starfall continent. Leng Shiqi destroyed it without even blinking. They were not thinking about how Leng Shiqi could obtain the minor 5 elements Chaos Grotto Heaven. Instead, they were dumbfounded. The multicolored light connected with the 5 rings, slowly forming a huge 5-colored ring. The moment the 5-colored ring was formed, it was as if a miraculous power that could seize the heavens and earth appeared. Then, the shock in everyone's eyes suddenly disappeared. Pfft! On the stage, Leng Shiqi and Kong Jianba vomited blood at the same time. The difference was that Kong Jianba only had a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, while Leng Shiqi vomited a large amount of blood. His body also swayed a few times as if he was on the verge of collapsing. Everyone in the arena was stunned. What was going on? Just a moment ago, the fight was still going well. Now, there was nothing left. The 2 people on the stage even vomited blood. Who won? All the cultivators who were at the one with the world level and above were astonished, including Fairy Luo Ying and High Duke Qi, who were at the peak of the heavenly origin stage. Others might not be able to see it, but they could. The reason for this was because the illusion had been shattered. The illusory realm set up by the Northern Wei Empire was very meticulous. It was able to maintain the fluctuations caused by a battle between profound penetration realm experts, but now, it had been shattered. And it was broken by Leng Shiqi, a spirit cultivator at the unity of heaven and man realm. Their only thought was that it was impossible. Most importantly, they didn't know how Leng Shiqi did it. In the end, they did see the 5-colored ring, and they did feel a strange power, but that power flashed and disappeared, and then the illusion collapsed. What happened inside? As for Leng Shiqi and Kong Jianba, it was quite normal for them to vomit blood. They had been using their spiritual power to fight in the illusion. When the illusion suddenly collapsed, they would definitely be injured by the backlash of their spiritual power. It was reasonable to say that Leng Shiqi's soul had already been formed, so he shouldn't have been more injured than Kong Jianba. In fact, he was more affected by the backlash of the 5 elements. In his battle with Kong Jianba, he had used almost all of his spiritual techniques. This was something that had never happened before. Unknowingly, he seemed to have grasped a trace of enlightenment. Especially when he used the 5 elements technique, he could already vaguely see what he was looking for. But it was also somewhat illusory. Thus, he decisively detonated the minor 5 elements chaos paradise, staking everything on one throw, drawing the pure 5 elements force within, wanting to succeed in one fell swoop. This was an unprecedented opportunity for him. Perhaps it could be called an epiphany. Unfortunately, just as he was about to succeed, the illusion collapsed. His spiritual power was violently expelled, and the 5 elements force that was close to him suddenly attacked him, causing great damage to his soul. It was all for naught. Leng Shiqi didn't know if he should be happy or sad. If he hadn't fought with Kong Jianba in the illusion, he wouldn't have had the chance to experience this rare epiphany. After all, the illusion was just an illusory array. It couldn't withstand the power of the 5 elements ring and collapsed. This caused Leng Shiqi to fail at the last step. In this attempt, he had ruthlessly destroyed the minor 5 elements chaotic paradise. Without it, it would be extremely difficult for him to comprehend the power of the 5 elements. Fortunately, he had already touched upon a trace of the 5 elements' force, so it wasn't a loss. He swallowed a few pills that nourished his spiritual power and got up to leave. He had lost this match, so he needed to recuperate as soon as possible to prepare for the last spot in the Ashen Ian world. At this moment, Kong Jianba said something, causing Leng Shiqi to stop in his tracks. It also shocked all the spirit cultivators in the arena. I lost. Leng Shiqi was puzzled. He hadn't been able to injure Kong Jianba without exposing his full strength. If he had succeeded in the 5 elements ring, he would naturally be able to do so. Unfortunately, he failed to do so. If he lost, he lost. What did Kong Jianba mean by this? You hurt me. Kong Jianba wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. The power you use doesn't seem to be fully controlled. Even so, it can still destroy the illusion. The power that can destroy the illusion is enough to injure me, or even seriously injure me. Therefore, I lost. When everyone heard this, it seemed to be true. Only Leng Shiqi knew that the barely formed 5 elements ring was something he had just comprehended. Everyone seemed to mistakenly think that he was hiding his strength. This was also good. It saved him another round of battle. However, Leng Shiqi admired Kong Jianba's magnanimity. Logically speaking, the higher one's cultivation level and status, the more they cared about reputation and face. Kong Jianba publicly admitted that he had lost to someone at the Heaven Man Unity realm. It would definitely affect his reputation, but he still admitted it calmly. Just this magnanimity alone far exceeded many people. Therefore, Leng Shiqi cupped his hands and said, Sect Lord Kong's divine strength is unparalleled. If we were to fight normally, I wouldn't be your match. I was the one who boasted. I have to admit defeat. Besides, even if I lose, I believe we will still meet in the Ashen Ian world. Kong Jianba smiled confidently and walked off the stage. It was only at this moment that the others reacted. Kong Jianba had actually admitted defeat. This Leng Shiqi must be poisonous. His first opponent had admitted defeat when he saw him use the 4-element sword Dao. His second opponent, young Master He Huan, had also left after leaving the illusory sky. Now that it was Kong Jianba's turn, he had taken the initiative to admit defeat. Is there some kind of curse on Leng Shiqi? Everyone who fought with him would admit defeat on their own? No, this isn't a curse. It's the lucky halo. While everyone was still immersed in shock and intense discussion, the next opponent walked onto the stage. They were Duke Qi from the Starfall dynasty and Meng Tian from the Myriad Laws mystic sect. However, the illusion array had been destroyed by Leng Shiqi. A few array formation masters were sweating profusely as they repaired it, but they soon gave up. Repairing an illusion array was not something that could be done in a day or two. From the looks of it, the final few battles would have to be postponed. The onlookers were naturally unhappy. The outcome of the battle between Leng Shiqi and Kong Jianba was very surprising, but the process was still dazzling. Leng Shiqi's strength had once again convinced everyone. At this moment, someone from the Northern Wei dynasty walked up and said, Everyone, you have seen the situation. I'm afraid the battle will be. Before he could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by Duke Qi. There's no need to postpone it. I admit defeat in this battle. Hua. The arena was drowned out by countless exclamations. Chapter 861. Everyone in the arena had interesting expressions, including Kong Jianba and Leng Shiqi, who had just left the arena. Leng Shiqi originally planned on seeing how Meng Tian would deal with Duke Qi. On the surface, there was a difference of an entire realm between their cultivation levels. He wondered what trump cards Meng Tian had. However, High Duke Qi admitted defeat without even fighting. Leng Shiqi and Kong Jianba had fought for a while. Although it was Leng Shiqi who was fighting, they had at least fought. Most importantly, why did Duke Qi admit defeat? The two of them had nothing to do with each other unless there was some unspeakable deal between them. Leng Shiqi wasn't the only one who thought of this. Many people had the same thought. Everyone looked at Meng Tian, who was pretty but not considered a peerless beauty. Her looks shouldn't be enough to make an important figure like Duke Qi submit. They couldn't figure out what benefits Meng Tian had to make Duke Qi lose face and lose the right to enter the Ashen Aeon realm. Wait. He still has a chance, but Leng Shiqi looked at Kong Jianba. At that moment, Kong Jianba's expression didn't look good. Duke Qi's admission of defeat meant that the two peak Heavenly Origin realm cultivators would have to compete for the last spot. To Kong Jianba, the matter that was in the bag suddenly became 50-50. On the other hand, one of the two peak Heavenly Origin realm cultivators would definitely not be able to enter the Ashen Aeon realm. This was a little too dramatic. Leng Shiqi pursed his lips. It was certain that Meng Tian had made a deal with Duke Qi. It wasn't appropriate for the Northern Wei dynasty to interfere. Although this violated the rules of the myriad spirit meat, who would dare criticize Duke Qi? He was the duke of the strongest dynasty on the continent. Ignoring his peak Heavenly Origin realm cultivation, his status alone was enough to make anyone dare offend him. Not even the Northern Wei dynasty's emperor. In terms of national strength, the Starfall dynasty was several times stronger than the Northern Wei dynasty. Even if the Northern Wei dynasty had more guts, they wouldn't dare criticize Duke Qi. They wouldn't dare disqualify him from continuing the competition. Perhaps this was the reason why Meng Tian wanted to make a deal with Duke Qi. State Duke Qi was probably planning to fight against the loser to win the final spot, but he didn't expect that Kong Jianba would be defeated. Both of them were at the peak of the Sky Origin stage. None of them were sure that they could win. What made Leng Shiqi even more concerned was that Kong Jianba had admitted defeat, but Duke Qi had still admitted defeat. It was obvious that the benefits Meng Tian had given him were beyond his imagination. It was even more attractive than entering the Ashen Aeon realm. Otherwise, Duke Qi wouldn't have admitted defeat even if he had to break the contract. The All Spirits Gathering, which was supposed to end today, had to be postponed temporarily due to an accident. Kong Jianba and Duke Qi's successive surrenders also caused a huge uproar. However, after the initial shock, everyone was looking forward to the duel between the two. Since the beginning of the All-Spirit Gathering, there had never been a fight between top-level Sky Origin stage cultivators. It was so exciting. Not to mention the All-Spirits Gathering, even in the entire world, there were very few top-level Sky Origin stage battles. Usually, if Tongxian Realm cultivators did not appear, Sky Origin Realm Pinnacle stage cultivators would be the strongest. Even if they encountered each other, they would not easily make a move. This was because any top-level Sky Origin stage cultivator had too many factions and connections. If there was any mishap, the consequences would be immeasurable. It was the same for Leng Shiqi. That was a topic for the future. His current priority was not here. Today, he had made a move in front of everyone again. The person hiding in the dark had probably done something. He wanted to see if he would still be dreaming today. Right on the heels of that, Leng Shiqi waved his arm. Immediately, a cold wind blew in the room as several ghost slaves with powerful auras appeared. These ghost slaves were transformed from Sky Origin Realm cultivators. They were Sword Supremacy Thousand Illusion, Zhuizhou, Sword Monarch Startling Dragon, Supremacy Divine Firmament, Heavenly Master Rain, Tian Qisheng, and Xia Pengyu. 7 famous Sky Origin Realm cultivators had turned into ghost slaves after their deaths and were controlled by Leng Shiqi. He made a few hand seals, and the auras of the 7 ghost slaves suddenly disappeared. They were originally formless. Now that they did not release their auras, no one would know that they were in the room. Leng Shiqi's order was to observe everything around them. In addition, they were to record everything in the room to see if they could find any clues. Then, a netherworld crack opened in front of Leng Shiqi, and 9 Leave walked out. She said with a serious expression, "Even with your abilities, you could still be silently tampered with. The other party's methods are rarely seen in the world. This time, I will protect you. I want to see who is causing trouble in the dark." 9 Leave was the one that Leng Shiqi had asked for help. 9 Leave still owed him half a favor last time, so she came without a second word. With the 7 ghost slaves and 9 leaves protection, if they still could not discover the situation, it would be very troublesome. 9 leaf heard that the Goo King had concealed all of her aura. Leng Shiqi closed his eyes and began to repair his soul. Time seemed to pass very quickly, but it also seemed to pass very slowly. Unknowingly, Leng Shiqi's soul suddenly fluctuated violently. 9 leaf, who was secretly observing, was moved. It really came. At the end of the endless desert, there was a huge mountain that went straight to the sky. On top of it stood a tall figure. This person looked up at the sky. There was no sadness or joy in his eyes, as if he could see through the past and present. At this moment, a strange person walked up from behind him. He was strange because this person's face was actually split into 2. Half of it was a human face. It looked somewhat handsome, but the other half was a ferocious beast face. The strange person knelt on the ground and said in a pious tone, "Lord Shifter Emperor, that person seems to have failed." The person called Shifter Emperor did not speak. He continued to look at the sky. After a long time, he sighed. "I already know about this. The barrier is getting thicker. If I don't act now, I may not have another chance in the future. She has failed, but at least she still has a trace of life. If I fail, Lord Shifter Emperor will never fail." The Shifter Emperor turned around. Strangely, there were 6 ripples in his eyes. It seemed like there was an endless abyss in them. "I can't wait any longer. Little fool, your talent is extraordinary. It won't take long for you to reach my level. If I win, you'll also have a chance. If you fail, don't try. Go to the human territory and hide. In the distant future, there may be a turning point." After saying this, the Shifter Emperor looked up at the sky again. This time, his eyes were filled with endless fighting spirit. It was as if he wanted to break through the sky. Swoosh! Leng Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes again. He was right. This time, he really had an inexplicable dream. Fortunately, he had a backup plan. He was about to ask 9 leaf what happened when he sank into the dream. But Leng Shiqi saw that 9 leaf was prostrating himself on the ground. He was still trembling all over. Chapter 862. In Leng Shiqi's impression, 9 leaf had always been arrogant. Even when she had just transcended the tribulation, she would rather die than submit. Leng Shiqi was very surprised that 9 leaf would lose her composure at this moment. At the same time, he realized that 9 leaf must have discovered something. 9 leaf. Leng Shiqi called out, but 9 leaf didn't seem to hear him. The golden light behind his head shone brightly, and the warm power of his divine soul spread out and caressed 9 leaf, gradually calming her emotions. 9 leaf raised her head, and her demonic eyes were filled with horror. "What did you see?" Leng Shiqi couldn't help but ask. 9 leaf's eyes instantly became complicated. After a long while, she said, "Just now, you were repairing your divine soul. Suddenly, all your life disappeared in an instant. I was shocked and thought you had been sneak attacked. When I was about to make a move, you..." Speaking of this, 9 leaf stopped again, and there was deep fear in her eyes. Leng Shiqi guessed that some changes must have happened to his body, but what kind of changes could make 9 leaf so afraid? He didn't rush to ask, but waited for 9 leaf's emotions to calm down again. "A terrifying and powerful aura suddenly appeared on your body. It was so powerful that I couldn't even breathe. It was so powerful that one look was enough to kill me thousands of times. What was even more terrifying was that the aura had a great suppression on my soul and bloodline. It felt like a god." Hiss. Hearing 9 leaf's words, Leng Shiqi couldn't help but gasp. He himself didn't expect that he would have such a change just now. He suddenly thought of the Demon Emperor in the dream. The aura that 9 leaf saw was very likely the Demon Emperor. Leng Shiqi immediately asked, "Have you ever heard of the name Demon Emperor?" Demon Emperor. 9 leaf's voice suddenly rose, and then her eyes changed as if she thought of something. Right, your aura just now was very similar to the legendary Demon Emperor. Then in your demon clan, what kind of cultivation is called the Demon Emperor? I just learned this after entering the far north wastelands. Nine Leaves' emotions stabilized, and she replied, in the far north wastelands, 7th rank monsters are generally great monsters. Among them, great monsters with great strength and power can call themselves demon kings. Today, there are 9 great demon kings in the far north wastelands, and they occupy almost half of the far north wastelands. Stronger than the demon king was the demon venerable, whose cultivation was equivalent to the mystic comprehending state of the human race. They were all experts who had mastered the laws of heaven and earth. As Demon Emperor, Nine Leaves' tone turned serious. This made Leng Shiqi think of a possibility. The Demon Emperor was an existence above the mystic comprehending realm. Nine Leaves said, transcending heaven realm. Transcending heaven realm. 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 There was a realm be a realm be a realm 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 be a realm realm realm. I came into contact with a few demon kings in the far north wastelands and learned of this realm from a secret. It's a realm second only to sacred spirit experts. Unfortunately, be it demon emperors or heaven ascension realm experts, they haven't appeared in a long time. I wonder if there are any experts of such a level on the continent. Heaven ascension realm? Leng Shiqi muttered. Currently, there were only 7 known mystic comprehending realm experts in the falling star continent. Even with the reclusive experts, there were at most a dozen or so. There were probably no heaven ascension realm experts at a better realm. Otherwise, they would have been able to enter the falling star continent together. Then, who was the demon king he saw in his dream? What did it have to do with him? You have too many secrets. You have probably been targeted long ago. You should think about how to avoid this calamity, Nine Leaf advised with lingering fear. Leng Shiqi couldn't help but think of Ozu's prophecy again. This might be a calamity in his life. However, he didn't believe in fate. Furthermore, the Archean Aeon realm was right in front of him. He couldn't give up this opportunity. Regardless of whether he believed it or not, he had indeed been targeted. He still had to continue being on guard. He stroked his chin. It's all thanks to you protecting me that I know all this. There's one more thing I need to trouble you with. Help me inquire about 2 people, or rather, 2 powerful demons. Following that, he described the appearances of the 2 people he had encountered in his dream in detail. Nine Leaf nodded and said, the characteristics you mentioned are very obvious. If they are demons from the far northern wastelands, I believe you will be able to find out soon. I'll be leaving first. Be careful and don't cause trouble everywhere. If you really can't do it, hide in the underworld for a while. Don't force yourself. Leng Shiqi was slightly taken aback. It was truly unprecedented for Nine Leaf to warn him not to cause trouble. He smiled. Don't worry. I cherish my life more than anyone else. I won't die. Following that, Nine Leaf teleported back to the far northern wastelands. Leng Shiqi recalled the 7 ghost slaves and continued pondering. Until now, he had already experienced 3 dreams. Was someone trying to tell him something through this method? But the 3 dreams didn't seem to have any connection at all. One was a teenager, one was Leng Shiqi's previous life, and the other was a super strong demon emperor. There definitely wouldn't be any intersection between them. However, what the demon emperor said made Leng Shiqi feel strange. The demon emperor seemed to be preparing to do something extremely important. Someone had already done it before him, but the result was failure. If he also failed, he was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to keep his life. How terrible was it to be able to destroy the soul of a strong person like the demon emperor? Also, if it was really just a dream, it was impossible for Leng Shiqi's body to show such a powerful aura that made Nine Leaf want to prostrate himself in admiration. Therefore, it was definitely not a simple dream. In addition to the dream, the purpose of the person who secretly acted made Leng Shiqi even more puzzled. Since the other party could quietly do something, it was impossible to guard against it. If they wanted to harm him, they could have done it long ago. Obviously, the other party didn't want to directly kill Ling Shiqi, but had other purposes. Aside from his own side, Meng Tiantian's sudden appearance also had an ulterior motive. There were too many doubts in Ling Shiqi's mind that he couldn't solve, giving him a headache. He shook his head and stopped thinking about it. Instead of blindly thinking, it was better to recover the power of his soul as soon as possible. Then, he hoped to gain something in the Ashen Aeon realm to further improve his strength. As long as one had the strength, any schemes and tricks could be broken without being attacked. A few days later, the illusion array in the martial arena was finally repaired, and the final battle in the heavenly origin realm continued. Ling Shiqi didn't watch the battle. As long as he didn't show up, the other party seemed to have no way to target him. Before entering the Ashen Aeon realm, he didn't want to cause any more trouble. In one day, the battle ended. In the end, Xian Haoying and Fairy Luoying both defeated their opponents, which was within everyone's expectations. The most intense battle was naturally the battle between Duke Qi and Kong Jianba. In the end, Kong Jianba won by a slight margin. According to the old man's account after he returned, the two's combat strength was very similar. Kong Jianba's victory was due to his thick skin and flesh. In the end, the two didn't use their strongest trump cards. They could only determine the outcome from their injuries. Kong Jianba's abnormal physical strength gave him a huge advantage, so he won. At this point, the 5 people qualified to enter the Ashen Aeon realm had been determined. They were Ling Shiqi, Xian Haoying, Meng Tiantian, Fairy Luoying, and Kong Jianba. What was very interesting was that the Thunderblaze dynasty occupied 3 out of the 5, while the most powerful Starfall dynasty was completely empty. Chapter 863. Moreover, among the 3 people from the Thunderblaze dynasty, 2 of them were at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. No one had expected such an outcome. It could be said that it was full of drama. In the Unity of Heaven realm competition, the Thunderblaze dynasty wasn't that great. Only one person from the Thunderblaze dynasty entered the top 5. As for those in the Gang Spirit realm, they had Delta Origi and Zhuge Puha. Ling Shiqi didn't look for Delta Origi during this time because he was being targeted. He didn't want to implicate her. He had observed Delta Origi's spiritual energy waves. Perhaps it was because they had gone through several battles, but the spirit crystals in Delta Origi's body had reached the limit. He believed that they would soon break through to the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. Speaking of Zhuge Puha, Ling Shiqi suddenly remembered something. He had found the ruins of the Star Tribe in the demonic Miasma mountain range and obtained the Great Star Picking Hand. At that time, he had promised Zhuge Puha that he would go to the Zhuge family to release a few experts. However, it had been almost 2 years, and he still hadn't gone. Speaking of which, Ling Shiqi really forgot about this matter. Initially, he had planned to go to the Zhuge family after obtaining the 3 talents imperial art from the Beilu nation. Who would have thought that he would go into seclusion in order to comprehend the power of the 5 elements as soon as possible? After coming out of seclusion, he came to the Northern Wei Empire. At the same time, he also felt a little strange. Zhuge Puha was clearly here, and they frequently met each other, but Zhuge Puha did not come to look for him. However, he didn't know that it was precisely because he had forgotten about this matter that he had avoided a lot of trouble. The next day, Ling Shiqi and Xian Haoying were invited to the Northern Wei Empire's palace. Meng Tiantian, Fairy Luoying, and Kong Jianba were also present. When they saw the emperor of the Northern Wei Empire, Emperor Wei Xuandi, none of them bowed to him. Wei Xuandi's expression didn't change as he said with a smile, "Since the few of you are the strongest victors of the myriad spirit meet, my Northern Wei dynasty will keep our promise and allow you to enter the Archean Aeon realm." Their hearts stirred. Their ultimate goal in participating in the myriad spirit meet was the Ashen Aeon realm. If not for the Ashen Aeon realm, Ling Shiqi would not have participated. Wei Xuandi clapped his hands, and a large group of people in white robes walked in from both sides of the hall. Then, they took out a lot of things and started to arrange them. Teleportation array? Fairy Luoying could see that those people were setting up a teleportation array. Fairy Luoying, you have good eyes. Wei Xuandi said, "There's no need to elaborate on the importance of the Ashen Aeon realm. Therefore, I can't take you there directly. Instead, I need to use a teleportation array to teleport you to the entrance of the Ashen Aeon realm." Leng Shiqi understood that the Northern Wei dynasty was right. They could not let them know the exact location of the Tsangyuan realm. The group of white-robed men were all experts in array formations, and the teleportation array was quickly set up. This was a one-time use teleportation array, and it would self-destruct after it was used. Wei Xuandi reached out his hand and said, "Everyone, please go ahead. There will be someone to pick you up after you teleport." Xian Haoying gave Leng Shiqi a look. Among the 5 of them, the 2 of them could trust each other. No one knew what was in the Tsangyuan realm, so it was best to be careful. Leng Shiqi nodded imperceptibly and walked into the teleportation array. The scene in front of them spun, and in an instant, the 5 of them arrived in front of a huge stone door. There was a sword mark engraved on the stone door. It was clearly an inanimate object, but it emitted an extremely sharp sword intent, as though it could pierce through the heavens. It made Leng Shiqi and company tremble in fear. This must be the sword mark left behind by sword sage Tsang Yuan. Kong Jianba said in a deep voice. Sword sage Tsang Yuan was the last sacred spirit expert to appear in tens of thousands of years. He was a supreme expert who stood above the laws of heaven and earth. The sword mark he left behind made those at the peak of the heavenly origin realm fear him. Behind this stone door was very likely the legendary Ashen Aeon realm. A statue-like person sat in front of the stone door. If not for the fact that his eyes were open, everyone would have thought that he was a stone sculpture. Upon seeing this person, Leng Shiqi frowned inwardly. This person was clearly in front of him, but he could not sense him. From this, it could be seen that this person's cultivation level far exceeded his, or he was an ordinary person. However, since this person was at the entrance of the Ashen Aeon realm, he naturally could not be an ordinary person. At that moment, Fairy Luoying took 2 steps forward and bowed. "Greetings, Senior Chen Xian." Fairy Luoying did not even bow when she saw Emperor Wei Xuandi, but at that moment, she bowed to this strange person and even addressed him as senior. Only a mystic enlightening realm expert could make her act so humbly. Chen Xian was the strongest expert in the Northern Wei Empire. Leng Shiqi cupped his hands. Regardless of their standpoint, experts were worthy of respect. Furthermore, the current situation was very clear. Chen Xian was most likely the guardian of the Ashen Aeon realm. They naturally had to be polite if they wanted to enter. The Ashen Aeon realm is far from the blessed grotto heaven you imagine it to be. There are countless dangers inside. "It's not too late to back out now," Chen Xian said slowly. His voice was as stiff as a statue's. No one who could come this far would give up. Kong Jianba said, "Danger is also an opportunity. If you want to avoid this danger, it will be impossible for you to go any further. In that case, go in. Whether you live or die will depend on your own fortune." After saying that, Chen Xian flicked his fingers, and 5 streams of light entered Leng Shiqi and company's bodies. Immediately after, the stone door opened a crack. A rich golden light shone and instantly sucked everyone in. The stone door closed, and 3 people appeared where the 5 people had been standing. They were Emperor Wei Xuandi, Situ Huanshu, and Duke Qi. The 3 of them were actually gathered together. Emperor Wei Xuandi bowed slightly to Chen Xian before speaking. "Will they succeed?" "They originally had a chance," Duke Qi replied. "If there were 5 people at the peak of the heavenly origin realm, there would indeed be hope. Unfortunately, they have entered the Heaven-Man Unity realm. It's hard to say. Since you knew this would happen, why did you give the spot to Meng Tian, Duke Qi?" Situ Huanshu's tone was filled with dissatisfaction. Duke Qi's face sank as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Situ Huanshu's body immediately trembled. At that moment, he felt his heart palpitate. If they were to fight, he would probably be killed on the spot. Duke Qi sneered. "Humph, what do you know? Meng Tian is very mysterious. Her true strength is much stronger than mine. It's a pity that Ling Shiqi's strength is comparable to the late stage of the heavenly origin realm, but he is still lacking. Senior Chen Xian, what do you think? Emperor Wei Xuandi asked Chen Xian. For tens of thousands of years, that passageway has been on the verge of collapse. Without knowing, those people will definitely attack with all their strength. There is about a 30% to 30% chance of success. 30% is still too low. Emperor Wei Xuandi frowned. Duke Qi said sternly, it's not impossible to fail this time. The falling cherry spirit domain's domain lord has disappeared in the Ashen Aeon world. That spiritual supremacy falling cherry will not sit still. When the time comes, we can lure her into the Ashen Aeon world. With her strength at the mystic enlightening realm, she will definitely be able to open the passageway completely. Emperor Wei Xuandi shook his head slightly. With Senior Chen Xian here, spiritual supremacy falling cherry will not come easily. Let's wait and see the results first. Chapter 864. This is the Ashen Aeon realm? Ling Shiqi stood at the top of a 1,000-foot-tall tree and frowned. After he entered the Ashen Aeon realm, he was greeted with abnormally rich heaven-earth essence energies. It was not spiritual powers, but heaven-earth essence energies. The heaven-earth essence energies here were at least several times stronger than the outside world. Strangely, there was a decaying aura in the heaven-earth essence energies. It wasn't just the heaven-earth essence energies. Even the space Ling Shiqi saw was the same. What he saw were only huge plants. The ordinary grass was as tall as a house, and the continuous forest looked like a mountain range that rose and fell one after another. However, all the plants were in a strange state. Their surfaces were black and purple as though they had been corroded. However, the plants didn't wither. It was possible that they were still alive. Therefore, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but wonder if this was really a mystic realm left behind by sword sage Zhang Yuan. His body moved as the star moon wings, which were dozens of feet long, spread out behind him. With a flap of his wings, he instantly flew several kilometers away. After flying for a while, Ling Shiqi realized that there wasn't a single living creature in this world. There was dead silence everywhere, as though this was a dead world. Just as he was feeling puzzled, a spiritual power fluctuation came from afar. He changed his direction and flew in that direction. He was extremely fast, and in a moment, he saw a dilapidated wall in the distance. It looked like a palace that had already collapsed. In the middle of the sky, there was a strange black object floating in midair. This object was still twisting irregularly, and it looked a little like a living creature. Beside it was a woman surrounded by countless dazzling flowers. She was Fairy Luoying. I never expected you to be the first to arrive. You're not slow. Fairy Luoying saw Ling Shiqi's leisure island. Ling Shiqi immediately understood that Fairy Luoying had deliberately caused a commotion to attract people over. At the same time, he also realized that Fairy Luoying hadn't figured out what the item was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have lured him over. Instead, she would have chosen to keep it for herself. He asked symbolically, Protectorate Lord Luoying, may I know what this item is? Why are you asking the obvious? If I knew what it was, would I have called you over? There was nothing here, but there was something strange here. Your cultivation isn't high, but you're still a king. Come over and take a look, Fairy Luoying snapped. Ling Shiqi landed on the ground and carefully observed the black substance. This thing didn't emit any dangerous aura, and it didn't seem to be dangerous. However, the black substance had a special aura that was a little familiar to him. He might have come into contact with a similar aura before, but he couldn't recall it at the moment. Even Fairy Luoying, who was at the peak of the sky origin realm, didn't dare to make a move. Ling Shiqi naturally wouldn't make a move. He shook his head. I don't have good eyes. I can't see anything. So. All of a sudden, Celestial Maiden Luoying moved her finger, and the petals around her revolved like sharp blades, slicing through the black substance. The petals drew upon the origin energy of heaven and earth and were extremely sharp. Even the space around them trembled slightly. Just a little bit of the aftershock was enough to make Leng Shiqi feel like he was being cut into pieces. He secretly took a few steps back as his body emitted a Buddhistic glow. He only felt better after activating the indestructible Vajra divine art. Fairy Luo Ying's strength was much stronger than what she had shown at the myriad spirit meet. Not only did she deliberately hide a portion of her strength, but the heaven and earth origin energy in the Ashen Aeon world far exceeded the outside world. The strength a heaven origin realm expert could produce naturally increased. On the other hand, Leng Shiqi didn't have much of an advantage. He could have fought Fairy Luoying head-on if he had used all his strength, but now, he didn't have much confidence. The black substance was sliced apart by the countless petals as it began to rapidly distort. It looked like it was about to collapse. At the same time, sporadic blue dots of light seeped out. The moment the dots of light appeared, Leng Shiqi's heart palpitated. He was still wondering where he had come into contact with this aura. When he saw the blue light, he suddenly recalled that it was similar to the Holy Lord's aura in his first dream. Leng Shiqi looked at the black substance again. It looked like a pitch-black universe, and the blue dots of light were stars. It was very likely that this item was related to the astral race and the dark shadow race. While Leng Shiqi was still in shock, the black substance suddenly paused. Not only it, but Fairy Luo Ying's petals were also frozen. It was as though time had frozen. Immediately after, the petals that filled the sky turned pitch black and shot back at Luo Ying like a torrential downpour. What was terrifying was that the pitch-black petals left hair-like black lines in the air as they shot out. They weren't black lines, but spatial rifts. When Leng Shiqi realized that something was amiss, he moved his feet and retreated a few kilometers. Fairy Luo Ying let out a strange cry as her figure was instantly killed by the black petals. Cherry blossoms floated down from the sky in the distance, and Fairy Luo Ying walked out unscathed. She pondered, I was just testing it out, but this thing was able to use my strength to counterattack me. Just now, its power was close to that of a Tongxian realm cultivator. Kong Jianba, have you seen enough? If so, come out quickly. A figure suddenly appeared. It was the Heavenly Dipper sect master, Kong Jianba. He said with a smile, I wasn't peeping. I just happened to arrive. This Ashen Aeon realm is very strange. I've been circling around for a long time, but I didn't see anything. Could it be that this is the only strange thing here? As he spoke, Leng Shiqi kept staring at the black substance. After shooting out the pitch-black petals, the black substance returned to its original state. However, just now, the black mark and the astral mark in his body trembled slightly. As the black substance returned to its original state, the mark and the astral mark stopped moving. It's strange, but the more it's strange, the more I feel that there's something fishy about it. Sect Master Kong, do you want to give it a try? Fairy Luo Ying curled her lips. Kong Jianba had seen her fruitless attack, but he didn't refuse. He suddenly punched out, and a fist force that could match the world came crashing down. The fist force stirred the world, causing the ground to tremble and the void to shatter wherever it passed. Breaking through with strength. I'd like to see how you counter my fist. The fist force instantly blasted the black substance apart, turning it into countless black gases and blue points of light. However, in the blink of an eye, these things condensed into a gigantic black and blue fist. The fist came crashing down, causing the sky to darken. It was as though all the heaven-earth essence energy had gathered here. The fist erupted with a blinding stellar radiance. The terrifying might left Kong Jianba alarmed. He stepped on the ground as a towering mountain appeared behind him, piercing into the clouds. It was his heaven and earth aspect. Kong Jianba's attack was actually forced out by the black substance. Chapter 865. With a loud boom, the mountain peaks around Kong Jianba shook violently. With every shake, the ground beneath his feet sank several feet. As the fist force dissipated, Kong Jianba's heaven and earth aspect showed signs of collapsing. With him as the center, a huge crater spanning dozens of kilometers was formed. Kong Jianba twisted his body, emitting a series of crackling sounds. If my body wasn't strong enough, I would have been injured. This thing can't be fought head-on. At that moment, a majestic aura came from the sky as Xian Haoying descended from the sky like an immortal. His eyes flashed as he said, "I thought you two were fighting. We would have fought sooner or later. If Lord Xian wants to fight, I'm happy to accompany you," said Fairy Luoying coldly. Ever since they entered the Ashen Aeon realm, they had been considered opponents. However, the current Ashen Aeon realm left them puzzled. Furthermore, they had encountered the strange black substance. Before figuring out the black substance's origins, they would not act rashly. Of course, once they discovered the black substance's usage and method, a battle would break out. Xian Haoying walked to Leng Shiqi's side. Leng Shiqi transmitted his voice to him. Xian Haoying looked at the black substance with interest. He didn't take action because Fairy Luoying and Kong Jianba's consecutive attacks indicated that ordinary attacks were useless. Instead, it would lead to a stronger counterattack. Under such circumstances, he had to think of other solutions. Since we can't attack, let's let it absorb energy. With a flip of his hand, Xian Haoying set up a white gas around the black substance. The white gas contained extremely pure spirit qi. If a spirit meridian realm cultivator absorbed a portion of it, it would be enough to instantly break through several spirit meridians. All of a sudden, the black substance moved and swallowed all of the white gas like a huge mouth. It's effective. Upon seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi and the other three had the same thought. However, in the next moment, the black substance suddenly expanded as a black gas with a decaying aura spread out. Wherever it passed, everything was charred black and devoid of life. With a wave of Xian Haoying's hand, a white gas appeared in front of him, blocking all the black beams. Leng Shiqi was standing behind him, which saved him some effort. The other two also easily blocked the black qi. Judging from the energy ripples, the black qi had the strength of heavenly yuan late stage. It was nothing to them. However, they were all silent. The black substance was simply unyielding. Could it be that we have to use a special spell technique? Fairy Luoying suggested. Many high-grade items had restrictions, and one had to have the corresponding spell to control them. Following that, she used several techniques to collect items, but they were all useless except for a series of chaotic hand seals. Don't waste your energy. A clear and melodious voice rang out. A multicolored light flashed in midair, and a graceful figure walked out from it. She was Meng Tian, who had never shown herself. Now, all 5 of them were gathered. You seem to know about this item? Xian Haoying asked meaningfully. Meng Tian was able to defeat the Starfall dynasty's Duke Qi without a fight. She was definitely not simple. After that, he used the Thunderfire dynasty's intelligence network to investigate Meng Tian. However, he discovered that there was no trace of Meng Tian before she appeared in the Mystic 10,000 Laws sect. It was as if she had suddenly appeared, and her past could not be found at all. Furthermore, Meng Tian's cultivation speed was terrifyingly fast. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi was only faster than Meng Tian, so he was able to barely dodge. What confused Xian Haoying the most was that Meng Tian's position in the Mystic 10,000 Laws sect was very high. She could use any cultivation method or cultivation resource as she pleased. Even the sect master did not have this right. Therefore, Xian Haoying was certain that Meng Tian was hiding many secrets. Meng Tian did not answer. Instead, she continued, this item was left behind by an almighty expert. Unless it's someone with the same bloodline, no one can do anything to it. Saying this was equivalent to admitting that she knew the origin of the black substance. Leng Shiqi and the others' expressions froze. Fairy Luoying and Kong Jianba took a few steps forward, vaguely trapping Meng Tian in the middle. Meng Tian smiled radiantly. 3 experts at the peak of the heavenly origin realm are ganging up on a weak woman like me. If this were to spread, where would you put your face? Why don't you listen to the origins of this item first? Little sister, there's no need to be nervous. You know a lot of things. If you tell me, I can at least guarantee your safety. Fairy Luoying smiled amiably. First of all, the space we are currently in is not the Ashen Aeon realm. The moment Meng Tian said that, the others nodded inwardly. Ling Shiqi had also guessed that this was not the Ashen Aeon realm. Meng Tian paced and said as she walked, in fact, the Ashen Aeon realm is not called the Ashen Aeon realm. It is only called the Ashen Aeon realm after Sword Sage Tsang Yuan passed through it. If Fairy Luoying had passed through, this place might be called the Luoying realm. And this item is the true entrance to the Ashen Aeon realm. Her words contained a lot of information. Legend had it that sacred spirit experts could open up a space with a wave of their hand. Therefore, everyone believed that the Ashen Aeon realm was a mystic realm created by Sword Sage Tsang Yuan. Perhaps he had left behind some good items and legacies. If Meng Tian wasn't lying, the Ashen Aeon realm was not a space created by Sword Sage Tsang Yuan, but a passageway. The black substance was the entrance. This had indeed overturned Ling Shiqi and company's impression of the Ashen Aeon realm. Even the people from the Northern Wei dynasty don't know what I'm talking about. After all, the Northern Wei dynasty has only existed for a few hundred years. However, this entrance was set up by someone thousands of years ago. That person is the Nether Temple's Holy Lord. He wanted to seal the Ashen Aeon realm, so he used some means to open up a space outside the Ashen Aeon realm, making people mistakenly believe that this is the Ashen Aeon realm. Then, he set up an entrance that only people with special bloodlines can pass through. From then on, he occupied the Ashen Aeon realm for thousands of years. Meng Tiantian's words were shocking. Upon hearing the words Nether Temple and Holy Lord, Ling Shiqi could not help but be shocked. His background was inextricably linked to the Nether Temple. In the first dream, he had personally seen the Holy Lord. Why did this person go to such great lengths to seal the Ashen Aeon realm? What was inside the Ashen Aeon realm? The few of them fell into deep thought as they digested Meng Tiantian's words. After a while, Kong Jianba asked, "Who are you? How do you know these things?" "That's not important." Meng Tian shook her head. "What's important is that I know how to open this entrance." Having said that, Meng Tian raised her jade-like finger and pointed at Ling Shiqi. "He is the key to opening the entrance. He is the person who has both the nether shadow and astral bloodlines." Chapter 866. Xian Haoying and the others were shocked. They were all experts at the peak of the Sky Origin realm and the leaders of top sects and extraordinary forces. They knew a lot of ancient secrets. They knew about the Star Clan, especially Luoying Fairy, who was the successor of the Four Saints. She even knew some of the truth. As for the Dark Shadow Clan, or the Nether Temple, they didn't know much about them. This force was too mysterious. Even if someone from the Nether Temple appeared occasionally, they would disappear very quickly. It was common knowledge that the power of the bloodline had been extinguished tens of thousands of years ago. Nowadays, except for some high-level demon beasts that still had a trace of the power of the bloodline, it was almost impossible to find such a person among the human race. But now, Meng Tian said that Ling Shiqi had both the bloodline of the Star Clan and the Dark Shadow Clan. No matter what kind of bloodline it was, they were all high-level bloodlines. In this era where bloodlines had disappeared, how could someone have two bloodlines at the same time? So, they immediately doubted it. Ling Shiqi looked very calm. The corners of his mouth were slightly raised, as if he didn't care to explain to Meng Tian. In fact, his heart was in turmoil. He was the only one in the world who knew that he had two bloodlines. How did Meng Tian know about it? At this moment, Ling Shiqi's mind flashed. Some things were connected. He suddenly looked at Meng Tian and another name appeared in his mind. Meng Tianzong. Besides Ling Shiqi himself, who else had the chance to see the secret of the bloodline? It was Meng Tianzong, who had been hiding in the depths of his soul. When he broke through to the spirit aperture realm on the Gu God Peak, he triggered the bloodline of the Dark Shadow clan. At that time, Meng Tianzong's consciousness was in his soul. Later, Meng Tianzong's consciousness disappeared inexplicably. After that, Leng Shiqi didn't pay much attention to it. He looked at Meng Tian and thought of her extraordinary illusion technique. He also thought of Meng Tiantian's strange behavior in the past few times. The names Meng Tianzong and Meng Tian seemed to be overlapping. Leng Shiqi himself had also fallen into a misunderstanding at the beginning. He had always thought that Meng Tianzong was a man, but no one had ever mentioned what Meng Tianzong looked like in the rumors. For those experts who were proficient in illusions, it was easy for them to change their appearance and gender. Previously, Meng Tian had deliberately given him the divine dreamscape spirit art because she wanted him to enter the Ashen Essence realm. As for her goal, it was to open a passageway to the true Ashen Essence realm. Meng Tian seemed to have seen through Leng Shiqi's heart. She smiled and said, "You finally understand. Since that's the case, then obediently open the passage." At this time, Xian Haoying moved and stood in front of Leng Shiqi. "You better make yourself clear." He could tell that Leng Shiqi had been tricked by Meng Tian. Regardless of whether Meng Tian was telling the truth or not, Leng Shiqi was the Western Baron King of the Thunderfire dynasty. His strength far surpassed most of the Sky Origin stage experts. Such a person would definitely be the pillar of the Thunderfire dynasty in the future. He, Xian Haoying, had to protect him. "You want to stop me?" Meng Tian sneered. She took a step forward as her aura suddenly soared. She instantly went from the peak of the Heaven-Man Unity realm to the Sky Origin realm. Early stage, middle stage, late stage, peak of the Sky Origin realm. Under the horrified gazes of Xian Haoying and company, Meng Tiantian's strength broke through the clouds, causing the world to tremble. Wisps of nomological power surrounded her. Instantly, the sky was filled with nine-colored light. Above the light, there seemed to be countless gods overlooking the world. Mystic Enlightening Realm. Leng Shiqi and company retreated a large distance. Xian Haoying, Kong Jianba, and Fairy Luoying were dumbfounded. This was because Meng Tian clearly wasn't hiding her cultivation level. She had truly broken through from the Heaven-Man Unity realm to the Mystic Enlightening realm in front of them. Only Leng Shiqi remained calm. He knew that Meng Tiantian's original cultivation level was far higher than this. He suspected that Meng Tian was at an even higher realm, the Heaven Ascension realm. "Now, do you still want to stop me?" Meng Tiantian's eyes flashed coldly as she looked at Xian Haoying and said coldly. Xian Haoying restrained his emotions. His expression was as calm as water, and his eyes were extremely firm. "Your cultivation level is powerful. I'm not your match. You went through so much trouble to come to the Ashen Aeon world because you don't want to attract attention. Don't forget that the Northern Wei dynasty's senior Chen Xian is outside. You're right, so all of you should go to sleep first." Meng Tiantian's eyes surged with a strange power. She didn't seem to do anything, but Xian Haoying, Kong Jianba, and Fairy Luoying's bodies suddenly stiffened. Then, they stood rooted to the ground in a daze. If one looked carefully, they would discover that their eyes were a little empty. Their consciousness had been pulled into an endless illusion. With just a glance, 3 people at the peak of the Sky Origin realm fell into an illusion. Only Leng Shiqi was left in the arena. However, his expression remained normal as he said, "Meng Tianzong, the strongest expert from 10,000 years ago is indeed powerful. Ignoring everything else, just your mentality is rare in the world," praised Meng Tian, or rather, Meng Tianzong. "You flatter me. So Palatial Master Meng gave me the divine dream spirit art to get me to come here." Meng Tianzong chuckled. "Not bad. You really didn't disappoint me. After cultivating for a few days, you were able to use the dream sky to control young Master He. If you hadn't defeated young Master He and Kong Jianba, I would have thought of a way to let you in. Alright, cut the crap. Open the passageway into the Ashen Aeon world. I can recover my cultivation level, and your cultivation level will improve greatly. You shouldn't reject a win-win deal. My cultivation level will improve greatly? Ling Shiqi raised his doubts. If I want to break through to the Sky Origin realm, I can do it at any time. It doesn't matter if I go to the real Ashen Ian world or not. Kid, you still want to get information out of me. Fine, there's no harm in telling you. The Ashen Ian world isn't a mystic realm, but a spatial passageway that connects to another continent. That passageway is filled with all kinds of powers, as long as they exist in the world. All the powers are in line with the heavenly Tao and contain origins. Therefore, no matter how you want to break through to the Sky Origin realm, you can comprehend the power you want there. To me, that place is not only a place to quickly recover my cultivation level, but also a way to leave the falling star continent. You were able to cultivate to your present realm in just a few years and possess combat strength that transcends realms. I believe that you will definitely be able to break through to the Sky Origin realm in there. After I leave, I will naturally not be a threat to you. I can also change the memories of these people, so that you won't have any worries. Similarly, I can also control you to open the entrance. It's up to you to choose whether you want to drink a toast or drink a forfeit. Ling Shiqi's heart was in turmoil. He never expected the Ashen Ian world to be a passageway to another world. At the same time, he had many doubts. What was that world? Why did Meng Tianzong want to go to that world? Did the sacred spirit experts that disappeared in the long river of history, such as Sword Sage Tsang Yuan, go to that world? However, Ling Shiqi still had doubts about Meng Tianzong's words. Just as Meng Tianzong said, since she could easily control Xian Haoying and company and even tamper with their memories, it would naturally be easy for her to control Ling Shiqi. Then why was Meng Tianzong still trying to persuade him? After all, she was a ruthless person who had killed all the disciples in his sect. Therefore, Ling Shiqi took a deep breath and raised his head. I can try to open the entrance, but I have a condition. Chapter 867. Meng Tianzong sneered. With a curl of his finger, 9 colored threads were pulled out from Ling Shiqi's body. As for Ling Shiqi, he felt his cultivation level drop at an extremely fast speed. In an instant, he had fallen to the border between the Heaven-Man Unity Realm's late stage and peak stage. Ling Shiqi, you have no right to negotiate with me. You have cultivated your entire life and know the importance of your foundation the best. When you were at the Spirit Meridian Realm and the Spirit Aperture Realm, I helped you open the Spirit Meridian Realm and the Spirit Aperture Realm. As long as I am willing, I can make your cultivation level drop back to the initial Spirit Meridian Realm at any time. You have made many enemies. When the time comes, there will be people who will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Meng Tianzong severed the 9 colored threads and threatened. It turned out that what Ling Shiqi thought was an opportunity was actually a trick left behind by Meng Tianzong. However, his expression remained unchanged. The more Meng Tianzong said and did this, the more it showed that the other party couldn't force him to open the entrance. Otherwise, Meng Tianzong would have already taken action. Why waste his breath here? In addition, although Ling Shiqi had the underworld as a life-saving trump card, he probably couldn't even buy an instant of time in front of Meng Tianzong. Therefore, at this point, he couldn't show any fear. Otherwise, he would only be eaten alive by Meng Tianzong. Besides, the real situation in the Ashen Ian realm was just Meng Tianzong's side of the story. Who knew what was going on? He said without any fear, Palace Master Meng, just do it. At most, I'll die. Unfortunately, I'm afraid this passageway can never be opened again. If I lose my life, I'll be a hero again 20 years later. Unfortunately, Palace Master Meng needs to find a second person who can open the entrance. I don't know how long it will take. Junior, you are challenging my bottom line. Meng Tianzong's eyes focused. Wind and clouds surged in midair. Endless heaven-earth essence energy was extremely violent, like the wrath of the heavens. The terrifying shockwaves caused Ling Shiqi to retreat repeatedly. He continued indifferently, Palace Master Meng, there's no need to do this. I still have the same words. I want to make a condition. Meng Tianzong was full of killing intent, but then all the killing intent and power disappeared as if they had never appeared. A sweet smile appeared on her face. You have courage, insight, and spirit. You already possess the bearing of a true expert. You have the qualifications to raise conditions with me. I made the right bet. Ling Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to block the entrance. Meng Tianzong couldn't control him at all. Now he finally had some initiative. My condition is simple. I want to know the truth about my identity. Huh? Meng Tianzong's eyes flashed. You don't know? No wonder there were a few people from the Nether Temple sneaking around. I can't say for sure who you are, but I'm pretty sure you're the reincarnation of the previous Nether Temple Holy Master. Reincarnation? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but recall the pair of eyes he saw in his dream. He thought of the young man, and now that he thought about it, it really was possible. It's not very accurate to call it reincarnation. At that time, the way of heaven covered the law of heaven and earth, so many people in the reaching heaven realm couldn't go further. They were even killed by the way of heaven. Therefore, some strong people in the reaching heaven realm tried their best to avoid the detection of the way of heaven. Some people didn't want to give up, so they tried to find another way. I chose the path of blood sacrifice. I wanted to gather the blood and luck of tens of thousands of experts to force a breakthrough. Unfortunately, I was still one step behind. The previous Nether Temple Holy Master didn't try to break through until he died. Before he died, he finally found a body that could allow the bloodline of the Dark Shadow Clan and the Star Clan to coexist perfectly. I don't need to say more. Ling Shiqi's face was gloomy. If what Meng Tianzong said was true, then he was most likely a body prepared by the Nether Temple Holy Master. The young man in his dream was a person who could have two bloodlines at the same time. He was Ling Shiqi now. Meng Tianzong also mentioned that the Nether Temple was hiding nearby. Maybe they wanted to take back Ling Shiqi, the body prepared for the Nether Temple Holy Master's reincarnation. With Meng Tianzong in front of him and the Nether Temple Holy Master secretly watching from behind, Ling Shiqi couldn't help but think of Ozu's prophecy again. He would die in the Northern Wei Empire. At first, Ling Shiqi didn't take it to heart. He thought he had enough abilities. However, when facing a strong person like Meng Tianzong, he didn't even have the chance to be teleported into the mansion of the dead. Was he really going to die here? Ling Shiqi silently opened the system and exchanged a few things. Looking at the extra things in the system space, he finally had some confidence. At the same time, he also had some doubts in his heart. Previously, he thought that the young man in his dream had escaped from the Nether Temple and was accidentally caught by the Blood Cloak Pavilion and thrown away on the Blood Fog Island. However, according to Meng Tianzong, the Nether Temple Holy Master had found the young man when he was about to die. That was to say, these things happened 10,000 years ago. Therefore, his body couldn't be the young man in his dream. Besides, if the Nether Temple Holy Master belonged to the Dark Shadow Clan, why did the Nether Temple Holy Master have the bloodline of the Star Clan? He raised his head and asked, No, first of all, the time is not right. Moreover, if I was the key to the Nether Temple Holy Master's reincarnation, how could I have left the Nether Temple? Also, where did the Nether Temple Holy Master get the bloodline of the Star Clan? You have so many questions. Meng Tianzong was a little displeased, but she still said, I don't know much about what happened later. There must be some internal problems in the Nether Temple. And you, or your body, should have been sealed for tens of thousands of years and was taken out in the last 10 years. Therefore, I'm also very curious. Where did your consciousness come from? Speaking of this, Ling Shiqi felt a chill in his heart. It turned out that his body had been sealed for tens of thousands of years. Then, Meng Tianzong continued, I'm not interested in your specific secrets. As for the bloodline of the Star Clan, it's just a fake god that has fallen long ago. In ancient times, the human clan had almost wiped out the Star Clan. Although there were still some survivors, they hid too deeply and couldn't be wiped out completely. Originally, the human clan had planned to give up as long as the survivors didn't cause trouble. However, they were captured by the Dark Shadow clan from another continent. The so-called Sanyuan realm was the passage through which the Dark Shadow clan came to the Falling Star continent. Later, it was found by the Sanyuan Sword Saint. The Dark Shadow clan seemed to be afraid of something, so the previous Nether Temple Holy Master sealed the entrance again. Even the Dark Shadow clan couldn't open it. The Dark Shadow clan was very strong, not weaker than the Star clan. Moreover, their methods were strange and impossible to guard against. Hongzai had never had much conflict with the human race, so he just let them be. Later, the bloodline power of the Dark Shadow clan weakened rapidly. They had no choice but to intermarry with the human clan. In order to integrate into the Falling Star continent, they built the current Nether Temple. Therefore, there were many bloodlines of the Star clan in the Nether Temple for them to study. It was indeed not easy to coexist the two precious bloodlines, but they still couldn't cross the barrier. Alright, I've said what I should and shouldn't say. If you don't open the entrance, don't blame me for being ruthless. At this time, Leng Shiqi was still digesting Meng Tianzong's words. Meng Tianzong had indeed revealed a lot of ancient secrets, which made Leng Shiqi feel like the amount of information was exploding. Vaguely, he seemed to have roughly figured out everything that had happened in the Falling Star continent for tens of thousands of years. Chapter 868. In the beginning, there were only humans and demons on this continent. At that time, humans had not formed a complete spirit cultivation system, so they could only submit to the tyranny of the demons. Later, for some reason, the Star race suddenly came to this continent. They stood on the side of the humans and drove the demons to the northern wastelands. Although the Star race ruled over the humans and called themselves gods, they did not enslave the humans as recorded in history. Instead, they helped the humans perfect the spirit cultivation system. Later, the bloodline of the Star race began to weaken, and their strength decreased greatly. The four saints of the human race rose and led the humans to overthrow the rule of the Star race, changing the name of this continent to the Falling Star continent. From then on, the human race entered the golden age of spirit cultivation. However, this was for the ordinary spirit cultivators. The real experts found that not only was the power of the bloodline dissipating, but even the laws of heaven and earth that they needed to comprehend were getting thinner and thinner. The many Holy Spirit experts that were born in the past disappeared. It was probably at this time that the Dark Shadow race found the Falling Star continent. They found that their strength could no longer fight against the entire human race of the Falling Star continent, so they became the Nether Temple. As time passed, when the last Holy Spirit expert, Sanyuan Sword Saint, disappeared, the Falling Star continent no longer had a Holy Spirit expert. According to Meng Tianzong, it was the heavenly Tao that covered the power of the laws. Those reaching heaven realm cultivators also began to think of ways to break through. Some like Meng Tianzong chose to break through by force, some like the Nether Temple Lord chose to fuse with the bloodline, and some even thought of reincarnation. But now, it seemed that they all failed. This included the shifter emperor that Leng Shiqi had seen in his recent dream. He should have faced the challenge of crossing that step as well, but he probably failed as well. Today, not to mention the reaching heaven realm, there were only a few spirit cultivators in the reaching profound realm. It could be seen that the heavenly Tao's concealment of the power of the laws was even more powerful. It was many times more difficult to comprehend the laws of heaven and earth than before. The age of chaos? Leng Shiqi thought, but he immediately felt that something was wrong. The age of chaos was caused by the exhaustion of the world's spirit energy, but the Falling Star continent was only a small place in the entire world. Moreover, the spirit energy was quite abundant, but it could not comprehend the laws of heaven and earth. It was as if the heavenly Tao was deliberately restricting the power of living beings. After Meng Tianzong failed to break through, he was lucky to leave a trace of remnant consciousness. 10,000 years later, it was activated by the resentful spirit, which was related to the Leng Shiqi. Now, Meng Tianzong wanted to recover his reaching heaven state cultivation base and find the continent where the Dark Shadow clan had come from. It was also the place where Sword Saint Sanyuan had gone. Perhaps she thought that there was still hope for further advancement there. Of course, all this was based on the premise that Meng Tianzong did not lie. Faced with Meng Tianzong's threat, Ling Shiqi shrugged and said, "But I don't know how to open the entrance." "It's simple. You just have to walk in." Meng Tianzong pointed at the black substance. "Walk in directly?" Ling Shiqi raised his eyebrows. He had just seen the sorry state of Fairy Luo Ying and the others. He didn't dare to enter carelessly. "What? Do you think I would deliberately harm you?" Meng Tianzong's tone was disdainful. However, Ling Shiqi felt that Meng Tianzong had harmed him greatly. Although Meng Tianzong had helped him quickly open up many spirit meridians and spirit cavities, making him very powerful in the spirit meridians and spirit cavities realm, even without Meng Tianzong's help, his cultivation would at most be a little slower. He wouldn't have been suppressed by Meng Tianzong, and his cultivation base would not have been in the hands of others. Meng Tianzong definitely knew more secrets that he hadn't told Ling Shiqi. He took a deep breath and glanced at the things in the system space again. Then, he stepped closer to the black substance. When he got close, the black substance suddenly expanded and swallowed Ling Shiqi in an instant. However, Ling Shiqi didn't resist, because he felt a very familiar and intimate power from it. Within the black substance, wisps of black qi wrapped around him, like a gentle hand caressing him. The blue light entered his body one by one, making the spiritual power in his body circulate faster. Strangely, the black substance gradually stabilized and soon turned into a semicircular black sphere. Sure enough, an irregular door appeared in front of Ling Shiqi. Wisps of golden light seeped out from it. This was the real Tsingyuan realm that Meng Tianzong had mentioned. It was also a passage that connected to another continent. With a whoosh, Meng Tianzong came to Ling Shiqi's side. However, she wasn't rejected by the black substance. Ling Shiqi turned around and saw that Meng Tianzong's spiritual power was circulating around Ling Shiqi. It was the portion that Meng Tianzong had absorbed. "Very good. Next, you just need to walk in. The entrance will stabilize for a very short time, enough for me to pass through." Meng Tianzong couldn't hide the anticipation on his face. Ling Shiqi raised his vigilance to the highest. The closer he was to completing Meng Tianzong's request, the more dangerous it would be for him. He took a few steps forward, and the entrance gradually turned into a door that only allowed one person to pass through. With a thought, the evil demonic light around him flourished. 6 arms grew on his back, and he instantly activated the evil Buddha indestructible body. Immediately, 3 seals appeared around him. In an instant, thunder rumbled, wind howled, and a world of ice and snow appeared. Tripartite seal. Ling Shiqi desperately wanted to enter the door and then forcefully close it. Unfortunately, his plan was good, but just as the tripartite seal was formed, Meng Tianzong snorted coldly. The tripartite seal in the air instantly collapsed. At the same time, Ling Shiqi felt his body stiffen. Then, he couldn't feel his body anymore. Apart from being conscious, he couldn't even move a finger. Meng Tianzong walked over expressionlessly. He stretched out his finger, and a wisp of light instantly entered Ling Shiqi's glabella. The focal length in Ling Shiqi's eyes gradually disappeared, becoming hollow. "You have only comprehended the superficial laws of heaven and earth. How dare you show off in front of me?" Meng Tianzong smiled disdainfully and said, "The entrance has already been opened. You are no longer of any value. However, I'm very curious about which path my old friend took." Meng Tianzong extended his palm, and Ling Shiqi's body walked into the door. Meng Tianzong followed closely behind. In his spiritual sea, Ling Shiqi's soul suddenly opened his eyes. The fact that he woke up here meant that his consciousness had been expelled to this final place. As expected, it still doesn't work. A Heaven Ascension realm expert who cultivates illusions is too terrifying. Ling Shiqi muttered, "Since she didn't kill me, it means that she has already brought me into the Ashen Aeon realm. I also want to know what other secrets my body is hiding." Chapter 869. This was a strange space. There was no sun, moon, or stars. There wasn't even any matter. There was only shattered space and countless spatial fragments. In the endless spatial fragments, a blurry passageway was faintly discernible. At this moment, two figures bathed in dazzling light suddenly appeared. They were Meng Tianzong and Leng Shiqi, who had lost consciousness. Upon arriving, Meng Tianzong almost collided with a spatial fragment. Her expression changed as she immediately formed seals with her hands. Dozens of divine shadows appeared behind her as nomological powers filled the surroundings, repelling all the surrounding spatial fragments. She shouted in disbelief, "Impossible! Why is the passageway already shattered? It's you. You must have done something." She suddenly grabbed Leng Shiqi's neck. As long as she moved slightly, she could strangle Leng Shiqi to death. Ka. Meng Tianzong gradually increased her strength as Leng Shiqi's body began to twitch unconsciously. He was about to be strangled to death. Huh? Meng Tianzong revealed a look of puzzlement as she said coldly, "Netherlord, if you don't come out, your reincarnated body will be reduced to ashes." However, Leng Shiqi's body was still like a dead fish. There was no reaction. Meng Tianzong couldn't help but frown. Could it be that I guessed wrong? No matter what, you are the only clue. Humph, good lad. Consider yourself lucky. In his spiritual sea, Leng Shiqi's soul looked into the distance. He seemed to be able to see through the outside world, but in fact, he couldn't see anything. He was still gambling. His soul was still there, which meant that Meng Tianzong hadn't killed him. Since Meng Tianzong hadn't done anything, it meant that he still had value. In other words, Meng Tianzong hadn't achieved his goal. Not long after, Leng Shiqi's vision suddenly turned black. Following that, he opened his eyes. What entered his eyes was a shattered void. At the same time, he felt excruciating pain all over his body, especially his neck, which felt like it was about to break. Leng Shiqi guessed that Meng Tianzong had the intention to kill him, but he didn't care about it. Instead, he asked, "Is this Ashen Essence realm?" For the Ashen Aeon realm to be called a realm, it should be a space at the very least. But what he saw now was clearly a shattered space. As you can see, the Archean Aeon realm has been destroyed. Meng Tianzong said in a deep voice. She had racked her brains to enter the Ashen Essence realm. Now that she had entered, it was already in ruins. All of her plans had been disrupted. There are spatial fragments everywhere. Even I have to be careful. Otherwise, I will die. Our top priority now is to leave this place and return to the Falling Star continent. Leng Shiqi seemed to have thought of something. He turned around and saw that the door he had entered through was no longer there. The portal has just disappeared, so there should still be a trace of its aura left. If you go and find it, you might be able to reopen the portal. Otherwise, I can only forcefully break through the void. I might still have a chance. As for you, you can only fend for yourself. Meng Tianzong's cultivation hadn't recovered, so she didn't have much confidence in returning to the Falling Star continent. It would be best if Leng Shiqi could reopen the portal. Therefore, she had to force Leng Shiqi. This time, Leng Shiqi didn't hesitate at all. This was because his consciousness had sneaked into the underworld while Meng Tianzong was speaking. He found that although he could enter the underworld, he couldn't communicate with the others in the underworld. In other words, even if he hid in the underworld, he was still in this space, isolated from the Falling Star continent. This way, no matter when he came out, he would still have to face the endless spatial fragments. Therefore, he might as well take advantage of the opportunity to stand on the same side as Meng Tianzong and quickly find an exit. Leng Shiqi stimulated the bloodline power in his body with all his might. A brilliant starry universe appeared behind him. Darkness and stars coexisted perfectly. Sure enough, he immediately felt that something in the distance was attracting him. "There's something over there." Leng Shiqi pointed. Meng Tianzong immediately wrapped Leng Shiqi around him and forced his way through the spatial crack. But after a while, Meng Tianzong suddenly stopped, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. At this moment, what was in front of them was a huge spatial storm. Under the storm sweeping, even the spatial fragments were destroyed. If they were touched even a little bit, they would be destroyed. Fortunately, the spatial storm didn't seem to be moving, as if it was frozen in place. Even so, Ling Shiqi felt a chill down his spine. "This is the thing you were talking about," Meng Tianzong said angrily. Not to mention that her cultivation hadn't recovered. Even if she was at her peak, she would still die if she encountered a spatial storm. In fact, Ling Shiqi wasn't lying. There was indeed something in the spatial storm that was attracting him. Perhaps it was something left behind by the Nether Lord. He didn't say it, but at this time, to his and Meng Tianzong's surprise, the spatial storm suddenly began to slowly move toward them. Boom! An invisible force exploded, and the entire space kept shaking. The space kept shattering like a mirror. "Let's go." Meng Tianzong pulled Ling Shiqi and quickly retreated. She didn't care about the spatial fragments behind her. Endless divine light flashed around her, and dozens of god phantoms appeared to desperately escape. However, the spatial storm behind them seemed to have locked onto them, and it moved straight toward them, and its speed was getting faster and faster. Ling Shiqi's mind was blessed. He guessed that he was also attracting something in the spatial storm, so that was why it was like this. He quickly asked, "Palace Master Meng, is there any way for me to enter the spatial storm? Have you suddenly gone crazy?" Meng Tianzong looked at Ling Shiqi strangely and said such a sentence. It was too late to run now, but he still wanted to enter the spatial storm. He was looking for death. Ling Shiqi said, "There is something in the spatial storm that is attracting me. That power is from the same source as me. Palace Master Meng should understand what I mean." Yes, Meng Tianzong immediately understood. The spatial storm might have the same nature as the black matter, which was to destroy or stop people from approaching, but Ling Shiqi was an exception. But no one could guarantee that this would be the case. If Ling Shiqi forced his way into the spatial storm and guessed wrong, he would only end up dead. "I can let you in, but I can only protect you for 2 breaths of time at most. Are you sure you want to go? This is the only way. It's not that I look down on you, Palace Master Meng, but the spatial storm is getting faster and faster. How long do you think you can run like this? At most, you can live a little longer. Instead of this, why don't you take the risk?" Ling Shiqi looked determined. He was not afraid of death. Meng Tianzong's face also showed a hint of surprise. "I appreciate you more and more. If you were born 100,000 years later, maybe you would have a place in the reaching heaven state. Go." Then Meng Tianzong stretched out his hand, and dazzling divine light wrapped Ling Shiqi. Ling Shiqi immediately moved and walked toward the terrifying spatial storm. Chapter 870. But something unexpected happened. Before Ling Shiqi could get close to the spatial storm, the colorful divine light around him was torn apart by the powerful spatial power and was about to dissipate in the blink of an eye. He didn't panic. With a thought, he disappeared from the space. Meng Tianzong's eyes widened. At this moment, he could not feel Ling Shiqi's aura. But he was clearly not dead. No matter how strong the aura concealment technique was, it would not work in front of Meng Tianzong. How could Ling Shiqi disappear? He was naturally teleported to the mansion of the dead. Meng Tianzong's divine light still lingered on his body. At first, he did not expect to enter the spatial storm directly. The reason why he wanted to get close was to roughly calculate the movement speed of the spatial storm. After about 3 breaths of time, he left the mansion of the dead and returned to the shattered space. And his position had already crossed the edge of the spatial storm and went straight to the center. Strangely, at this moment, the spatial storm actually stopped. The power in the center of the storm would have been able to instantly crush him, but at this moment, it did not harm him at all. Ling Shiqi also saw the thing that attracted him. It was a fist-sized bead. He secretly breathed a sigh of relief. This spatial storm was similar to the black matter. It would not harm him. At the same time, it also meant that the shattering of this space was related to the Nether Holy Lord. Ling Shiqi carefully looked at the bead. The surface of this object was bright, and there were traces of destroyed spatial fragments turning into hair-like light rays that entered it. And inside the bead was darkness. There were also some flickering light spots. Leng Shiqi's expression suddenly became solemn as he stared at them. He looked at it for a while and realized that there seemed to be a universe inside the bead. There was actually a world inside this bead. What exactly was this thing? Buzz buzz, suddenly, the bead trembled rapidly and made a piercing sound. At the same time, two completely different powers emerged. One was extreme destruction, and the other was infinite vitality. The power of destruction spread outwards, forming a spatial storm. The vitality within the bead seemed to have given birth to a new world. At this moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly froze. His eyes shone with a shocking light, and his mind exploded with thunder. In the depths of his mind, a door opened. Ever since he had obtained the system on Blood Fog Island and comprehended the mesmerizing flurry of flowers, his cultivation path had been the path of integration. He was attempting to fuse spiritual techniques, cultivation methods, and all sorts of strange powers. He was even attempting to fuse the laws of heaven and earth. His original plan was to comprehend the power of the 5 elements and merge it with the powers of yin and yang, 3 talents, for symbols, and 6 paths of reincarnation. With that, he would be able to break through the ethereal state and reach the Tongxian state. Perhaps one day in the future, he could even create a new world with his own strength. But at this moment, he felt that he was wrong. He had been wrong all along. Why must it be fused? Why couldn't it be destruction? Since he couldn't create the world, he would destroy it. Moreover, destruction and life were not opposites. Life represented destruction, and destruction represented new life. Boom! Powerful black and white flowing lights burst out from both sides of Leng Shiqi. It was his trump card, the power of yin and yang. This time, he didn't let the power of yin and yang merge. Instead, he controlled the 2 powers to collide fiercely. He was going to reverse yin and yang. At the same time, the seal of 3 talents, the formation of 4 elements, the ring of 5 elements, and the 6 paths of reincarnation all appeared. Leng Shiqi moved his mind. The seal collapsed, the formation disintegrated, the 5 elements were reversed, and the 6 paths of reincarnation were out of balance. An extremely terrifying power suddenly surged in the spatial storm. Even Meng Tianzong, who was outside, was shocked. She had also tampered with Leng Shiqi's power. Even though they were separated by the spatial storm, she knew that Leng Shiqi wasn't dead. In other words, Leng Shiqi had guessed correctly. She didn't know how he had gotten into the center of the spatial storm. Now, she didn't know what terrible things he had triggered. Even Meng Tianzong, who used to be a strong man in the reaching heaven state, was afraid of him. "Is this the trump card you left behind?" she whispered. But Meng Tianzong would never know what Leng Shiqi was doing. He was doing something even crazier than Meng Tianzong's blood sacrifice of tens of thousands of his disciples. In the spatial storm, all kinds of power of the origin were raging. It had formed another small storm. Storm of the origin. Leng Shiqi felt like he was going crazy. But he couldn't give up this opportunity. This was a rare state of enlightenment. If he missed it, he might never encounter it again. But now, the power was beyond his control. At the moment, Leng Shiqi was bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. His whole body was twitching. He was holding on with his mind. The storm of the origin around Leng Shiqi gradually solidified. It started to condense and shrink, but the power of the storm of the origin was increasing exponentially. But the power didn't increase at all. Leng Shiqi was under more pressure. Gradually, he was on the verge of collapse. If he didn't stop now, he would be devoured by the power of the origin and die without a burial place. At this moment, the bead began to move. With a crack appeared on the surface of the bead. Then, more and more cracks appeared. Bang! Soon after, the bead exploded with a bang, and a destructive force appeared, drilling into the storm of origin energy. The storms suddenly shrank, shrinking several times in an instant. At the same time, another life force poured into Ling Shiqi's body. The endless life force kept him from exploding and continued to maintain the storm of the origin. Ling Shiqi didn't know why this happened, but he knew that now was the best opportunity. He suddenly pulled with his arms. Rip, the storm of the origin was torn to pieces in an instant. Boom, boom, boom. The shattered origin force erupted with an apocalyptic power, and even the spatial storm was blasted open by him. Seeing this, Meng Tianzong couldn't help but open her mouth. There was only surprise in her beautiful eyes. To be able to forcefully blast open the spatial storm, this power was something she couldn't do at her peak. What's more, Ling Shiqi's aura was also full of destruction. He turned his head and looked over. That destructive gaze made Meng Tianzong feel as if there was a blade on her back. Ling Shiqi reached out and the space in front of him collapsed one after another. It was no less terrifying than the spatial storm. What kind of power is that? Meng Tianzong asked in disbelief. Not to mention Ling Shiqi, who was a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man realm, those Ascension realm powerhouses from 10,000 years ago couldn't have such power. What did he experience in the spatial storm? Ling Shiqi looked at his palm and felt a little incredulous. He replied, I don't know. I'll call it the power of destruction. Chapter 871. The power to destroy the world. It really lives up to its name, Meng Tianzong said in a low voice. Her expression was a bit stiff. She still didn't understand what Ling Shiqi had experienced in the spatial storm, because she clearly remembered that the Netherhell Saint Lord didn't have the power to destroy the world at all. So even if the Netherhell Saint Lord had left something there, it couldn't have given Ling Shiqi such terrifying power. Moreover, Meng Tianzong couldn't think of anything that could make a person's power change so drastically in such a short time. Originally, she could kill him with just one look, but now he was a great threat to her life. Even as a reaching heaven state warrior from 10,000 years ago, she found it hard to accept. Ling Shiqi was also a bit stunned. He succeeded just like that? He had obtained the power he had always dreamed of. Although the process was tortuous and brought him to the brink of death, time passed quickly. In less than 15 minutes, his power had advanced by leaps and bounds to an unimaginable level. This was a transformation. Now, even he didn't know how powerful he was. He only had one feeling, and that was power. Unfortunately, before he could properly experience this power, another change occurred in this space. Ling Shiqi looked up. In this empty space, endless black clouds appeared inexplicably. A power that directly struck the soul descended. All the space fragments, including the spatial storm, disappeared in an instant. In the blink of an eye, only the rolling black clouds, Ling Shiqi, and Meng Tianzong were left in this space. The two of them thought of the same word at the same time. Heavenly tribulation. Ling Shiqi had seen 9 leaves tribulation in the demonic Miasma mountain range. At that time, he was very far away, but he felt like he was going to be crushed to death by the power of heaven and earth. At this time, he experienced that feeling again. And this time, the power of heaven was 1,000 times stronger than before. As for Meng Tianzong, she was completely shocked. She knew this heavenly tribulation very well, because she had broken through to the reaching heaven state because of this tribulation. This was the path to the reaching heaven state, the reaching heaven tribulation. Ling Shiqi's cultivation base went from unity of heaven and man to unity of heaven and earth to heaven-reaching realm. If Meng Tianzong was only 70 or 80% sure before, he was now certain that Ling Shiqi was the reincarnation of the Netherworld Saint Lord. He just didn't know what method the Netherhell Saint Lord had used. Ling Shiqi, this is the tribulation of transcending heaven. Both humans and demons must go through this tribulation if they want to enter the transcending heaven realm. The heavenly tribulation had 3 major tribulations: the heavenly thunder tribulation, the mystical fire tribulation, and the heavenly heart tribulation. Anyone who was qualified to undergo the heavenly lightning tribulation would be able to withstand it. This tribulation could be done with the help of some external objects. However, the profound fire tribulation will directly burn your body, so you can only endure it. Spirit cultivator whose body is not strong will definitely die. As for the heavenly will trial, it was the most terrifying one. 80% of Tongxian realm cultivators would fall under this trial. Everyone's heavenly heart tribulation is different. I can only tell you 2 words: attack the heart. Meng Tianzong introduced Leng Shiqi to the heavenly tribulation. As someone who had experienced it, she was very experienced. He was slightly surprised that Meng Tianzong would remind him. Leng Shiqi pointed his finger, and an obvious spatial crack spread in front of Meng Tianzong. Then, the space collapsed and an entrance appeared. This is the entrance to the falling star continent. Palace Master Meng should go back first to avoid being affected. Hearing this, Meng Tianzong looked deeply at Leng Shiqi. She had reminded him just now because she thought that Leng Shiqi would most likely die under the tribulation of transcending heaven. Although Leng Shiqi was strong, he had just obtained this power and was not familiar with it yet. How could he withstand the tribulation of transcending heaven? Meng Tianzong originally wanted Leng Shiqi to hold on for a while and find a way to return to the falling star continent, but Leng Shiqi could easily open the way back. What made Meng Tianzong even more confused was that Leng Shiqi did not have to do this. He was undergoing the tribulation, and Meng Tianzong, whose cultivation had not recovered, could only hide aside. If he failed, Meng Tianzong might be trapped here forever. If he succeeded, Leng Shiqi's power could suppress Meng Tianzong. Therefore, Leng Shiqi's actions made Meng Tianzong very confused. Waves of heavenly pressure fell on Leng Shiqi. He knew that he had been locked on by the tribulation. Even if he ran into the underworld, as long as he dared to show his face, he would still be found by the tribulation. This tribulation could not be avoided. So Ozu's prophecy was referring to this tribulation of transcending heaven. Will I die here? Leng Shiqi did not believe it, but he still said to Meng Tianzong, Palace Master Meng, I have a request. Meng Tianzong thought to himself, tell me. In my life, I have no friends or relatives. This world makes me feel very strange. If I die, I'll have to trouble Palace Master Meng to take care of the Western Baron Imperial residents. Those people are not close to me, but they are still my subordinates. I can't let them suffer because of my death. Also, there is a girl called Blood Moon in the discipline department of the Thunderflame dynasty. Help me tell her that I went to another continent. At the end, Leng Shiqi's tone had a touch of gentleness. Are these your last words? It's not like you. Palace Master Meng, if you talk a little more, I'm afraid you won't be able to go back. Leng Shiqi pointed at the opened hole. Under the heavenly pressure, the hole had begun to twist slightly and could collapse at any time. The path to heaven is not so easy to walk. You, take care. Meng Tianzong left these words and walked into the hole wrapped in colorful divine light. Leng Shiqi looked up at the sky. The tribulation clouds were getting darker and darker, and there were rolling thunder. The terrifying pressure caused the space to collapse. Leng Shiqi held the Thousand Illusion Dao sword in his hand and pierced the sky. The Thousand Illusion Dao sword left his hand and pierced the sky. The sword of annihilation slashed out, and the blade that seemed to split open the sky seemed to tear apart the tribulation clouds. He waved his arms and 2 huge dragons, one black and one white, rushed into the sky. The 2 dragons constantly collided with each other, emitting a terrifying will of destruction. Reverse yin and yang dual dragon convergence. His eyes were filled with determination. He was already prepared to go through the tribulation. Even though he was not familiar with his own power of destruction, he was very confident. Not only was he confident in his own strength, but the things he exchanged from the system not long ago to save his life in front of Meng Tianzong made him even more confident. The reason he let Meng Tianzong leave was because he did not want to expose his trump card. The tribulation clouds kept churning, but the heavenly lightning did not fall. Instead, it flashed with endless fire. In this dark space, it was as if the sun had descended and burned everything. Leng Shiqi frowned. Meng Tianzong had just said that the tribulation to heaven was first the heavenly lightning tribulation and then the mystical fire tribulation. But now it seemed that the tribulation clouds had gathered two types of power at the same time. Then, another strange power suddenly appeared in the tribulation clouds that struck directly at the soul. Ling Shiqi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He was really cold. He suddenly realized that his tribulation to heaven would not be three types of tribulation at the same time. Chapter 872. Thinking of this, Ling Shiqi was not worried. If it came one by one, he could rely on his trump card. But if three tribulations came at the same time, he was in danger of dying. Meng Tianzong said that the heavenly will tribulation attacked the heart. It was probably something like an inner demon. When going through an inner demon, one's mind would have to fight with all its strength. How would one have the strength to resist the heavenly lightning tribulation and the mystical fire tribulation? Ling Shiqi did not know why his heavenly tribulation had changed like this. He suddenly had a bad feeling. If there was no other way, he would hide in the Netherworld mansion. He believed that someone would use the Netherworld mansion. Then, he would be able to teleport away. Although he could not avoid the heavenly tribulation, at least he could delay it for a while and think of a way to deal with it. At this moment, something strange happened. The terrifying heavenly tribulation clouds in the sky strangely dissipated. They did not disappear suddenly. Instead, they gathered together in an instant, leaving only a few feet in size. In addition to the heavenly might, Ling Shiqi suddenly felt an aura that was enough to make one's soul tremble. The remaining heavenly tribulation clouds rolled. Then, a crack appeared in it, and an eye opened. In an instant, Ling Shiqi's body trembled and became extremely stiff. At this moment, he felt like he was facing the entire world alone. The eye did not have any emotions or waves. It just looked at Ling Shiqi calmly. However, it was this one glance that gave him the urge to kneel down and kowtow to him. He roared, and his body shone with all kinds of divine light. Buzz! A Vairocana stood in the void. Not only that, but several Dharma manifestations of the ancient evil gods, savage beasts, and the Netherworld god appeared at the same time. Ling Shiqi held his head high and stepped out. Among the Dharma manifestations, golden light flashed and condensed into an indomitable divine shadow. The divine shadow held countless golden palaces in its hands and put them into a divine kingdom. The divine shadow looked like Ling Shiqi himself. He did not believe in gods or the heavens. He only believed in himself. The eye in the sky moved slightly, and the invisible power of the world came crashing down. The space around Ling Shiqi exploded with a bang, and all the dermas around Ling Shiqi collapsed like paper. Even the space around them collapsed, leaving behind only terrifying spatial turbulence. Pooh! Ling Shiqi spat out a mouthful of blood. He hurriedly formed a seal, and the power of the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth spun around him. The 5 elements reinforced and restrained each other, and in his hands, they restrained each other. Waves of destructive power emerged. The power of world extermination continued to intertwine and explode. It was barely able to resist the spatial turbulence, but it wouldn't last for long. Ling Shiqi was incomparably shocked. What exactly was that eye? He was supposed to face the heavenly tribulation. Could it be that this was the heavenly tribulation? But it was different from what Meng Tianzong and the others faced. On the other side, Meng Tianzong had returned to the beginning through the exit opened by the Ling Shiqi. Xian Haoying and the other 2 Sky Origin stage cultivators were still trapped in Meng Tianzong's illusion. As for the black substance, it was gone. From the looks of it, as long as someone entered once, there would be no next time. Meng Tianzong wasn't in a good mood. She had used all her means to enter the myriad spirit meat. In the beginning, everything was under her control. Who would have thought that the real Ashen Aeon realm would no longer exist, leaving behind only a spatial storm? What was even more unexpected was that Ling Shiqi's heaven-defying actions were unbelievable. Now, Meng Tianzong's plan had been completely disrupted. First of all, it wasn't easy to recover her cultivation level. Furthermore, she had planned to head to other continents to find a way to break through. Now, all of her plans had gone down the drain. Since there's no way to break through the Ashen Aeon realm, only the far northern wastelands and the East Sea have a chance. She sighed slightly, but her beautiful eyes immediately widened as if she had sensed something. She stood rooted to the ground as if she had been struck by lightning. Immediately following that, her face was filled with horror. She formed a seal with her hands, and her aura rapidly fell. In the blink of an eye, she returned to the Heaven-Man Unity realm. At that moment, she said in disbelief, "That aura is Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. Who is becoming a sage?" The Heavenly Slayer Tribulation was the tribulation that a Heaven Ascension realm expert had to experience to break through to the Sacred Spirit realm. Back then, Meng Tianzong had nearly died under the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. Countless Heaven Ascension realm experts had died under the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation. That was how the tribulation got its name. Just now, she had suddenly sensed a trace of the Heavenly Slayer Tribulation's aura. In the current Starfall continent, Mystic Enlightening realm experts were extremely rare. Which Heaven Ascension realm expert was transcending the tribulation? She wasn't the only one. In a small town in the Starfall dynasty, an ordinary old beggar was tasting the food he had just begged for. His face was filled with satisfaction. He took a bite of the hard mantu, but before he could swallow it, his expression turned extremely shocked. He looked up at the sky as a glint flashed in his eyes. After a long while, he muttered, "Is it that two-faced beast or that old friend from overseas? To dare try to break through in this era, I'm impressed." At that moment, he hesitated for a moment before laughing self-deprecatingly. "I'm an old bag of bones. It's best I don't torment myself." In the East Sea, at an unknown depth of the sea, a person was sitting cross-legged. It was too dark here, and one couldn't see his appearance. One could only vaguely make out a figure. The figure was originally as silent as a rock, but he suddenly opened his eyes. Two rays of blue light pierced through the water for dozens of miles. "Someone has already reached that step. I'd like to see what your end will be." With that, the figure suddenly disappeared. In the Blood Beast sect, on the 4th floor of the Blood Prison, the dozing venerable beast suddenly woke up. It raised its head and seemed to be able to see through all the restrictions and distant space. Its eyes were filled with fear. Heaven has descended again. Ling Shiqi was already bathed in blood. The eye in the sky hadn't done anything, but he was already heavily injured. The eye also transmitted a thought. Ling Shiqi didn't understand anything else, but he understood one sentence. Heaven cannot be touched. Boom! The giant eye's eyeball moved slightly, and Ling Shiqi's body suddenly exploded into countless pieces. He didn't even have a chance to resist heaven. The giant eye slowly closed, but just as it was about to close, the giant eye suddenly opened. Because Ling Shiqi wasn't dead, only a pile of broken straw was left in the place where he had been. Substitute doll. This was the life-saving trump card that Ling Shiqi had specially exchanged from the system space. He had originally prepared it for Meng Tianzong. Even if he couldn't avoid Meng Tianzong's illusion and was killed once, he could use the substitute doll's resurrection to find an opportunity to teleport into the underworld and save his life. He didn't expect to use it here in the end. Ling Shiqi was resurrected. He communicated with the underworld and was about to teleport in. Who would have thought that the moment the giant eye opened, it would seal Ling Shiqi's consciousness, and his body would be obliterated. This time, the giant eye didn't close. Instead, it looked for a while. Sure enough, a few rays of white light were flickering slightly. It was a pure white stone. The white light flashed and formed the figure of a person. It was Ling Shiqi. He wasn't dead, but the system space was missing a piece, the resurrection stone. At this moment, Ling Shiqi finally felt a sense of despair that he hadn't felt in a long time. No matter how strong he was, it was useless. No matter what life-saving trump card he had, it was useless. He didn't even have the chance to escape into the underworld. The path of spirit cultivation was to go against the heavens. This was something that every spirit cultivator knew. Now, Ling Shiqi finally understood that what they had to go against was the heaven in front of them. Meng Tianzong was almost killed by the heaven back then. If not for the remnant consciousness she had hidden, her soul would have been destroyed long ago. Facing heaven, how strong did one have to be to take another step forward? Ling Shiqi couldn't help but feel a sense of powerlessness in his heart. He thought of the Netherworld Holy Lord and the Shifter Emperor in the dream. They were also making various preparations to fight against heaven. Now, it seemed that they had all failed. He was afraid that he would fail as well. In order to deal with Meng Tianzong, Ling Shiqi exchanged 3 life-saving items from the system space. They were the substitute doll, the resurrection stone, and the twin life jade pendant. These 3 items could allow him to resurrect once, which meant that he had 3 extra lives. Now, it seemed that 3 lives were far from enough. It wasn't that he didn't want to exchange for more, but if he directly exchanged from the system and didn't draw a lottery, the price of system coins would be astronomical. He was rich, but most of it was in the Western Desolation King's mansion. He only had enough to exchange for 3 items. Now, the only thing he had left was the twin life jade pendant. If he died 2 more times, he would really die. Ling Shiqi raised his head and looked at the giant eye. He was sure that he would die again in a breath of time. Even if he used the twin life jade pendant to revive, it would be useless. He stretched out a finger and tapped on his body a few times. After he finished, his entire body was destroyed again. Different from before, there was still some blood left behind after he died. After 2 breaths of time, an emerald light appeared. Ling Shiqi was resurrected for the 3rd time. This time, he didn't do anything. He just looked at the giant eye in the sky. There was no fear or despair in his eyes. It was as if he wanted to imprint it in his heart. For some reason, the giant eye also showed a trace of emotion this time. Ling Shiqi could see that it seemed to be a little angry. Then, there was a bang. Without any surprise, he once again shattered into a bloody pulp and was then swallowed by the spatial turbulence. This was his last life. Ling Shiqi, dead. Chapter 873. Thunderfire Dynasty, Imperial Palace. Lei Haoyan's soul clone suddenly flipped the table in front of him. He looked flustered and even a little panicked. The surrounding servants had never seen His Majesty in such a state before, and they were all a little stunned. Lei Haoyan took a step forward and turned into a stream of fire as he charged out of the main hall. Such a huge commotion naturally attracted the attention of a large number of imperial guards. At first, they thought that an assassin had barged in. They took a look and realized that it was actually their emperor. Lei Haoyan burst forth with his fastest speed and came to a corner of the palace wall. He formed a hand seal, and a faint golden door appeared before him. He didn't dare to be negligent and immediately walked in. It was the dragon vein. The moment he entered, he immediately shouted, "Is old Master Qiao here?" The space in front of him rippled, and an elder walked out. It was the Thunderfire Dynasty's mystic comprehending realm expert, old Master Qiao. "Your Majesty, why are you in such a hurry? Did something big happen?" Old Master Qiao saw Lei Haoyan so flustered and thought that something had happened in the Thunderfire Dynasty. Lei Haoyan cupped his hands and said, "Old Master Qiao, I'm afraid I won't live for long. I see that your Majesty is full of vitality and spirit energy." "Why do you say that?" "I won't hide it from old Master Qiao. A few years ago, a mysterious expert planted a restriction on me. My soul has been corroded, and when it weakens to a certain extent, my physical body will even be taken away." Old Master Qiao was shocked when he heard that. He stretched out his hand and pressed on Lei Haoyan's head. "Your Majesty, I was rude." A gentle force enveloped his body. A moment later, old Master Qiao said in surprise, "Your Majesty's soul power is indeed a little damaged. Who could have such a strange method?" "I'm not sure either. Just now, I felt my soul shake for no reason, so I wanted to ask old Master Qiao to help." "Don't worry, Your Majesty. This is the Thunderfire dynasty, the dragon vein. With me here, no one in the world can hurt your majesty, old Master Qiao said confidently. Lei Haoyan wasn't very relieved when he saw that. Not long ago, he knew that Ling Shiqi had already died. He did not have a symbiotic relationship with Ling Shiqi, but there was a hierarchy between them. If Lei Haoyan died, then he was dead. It was equivalent to the Ling Shiqi losing a part of his soul for nothing. If Ling Shiqi died, then his consciousness could take over Lei Haoyan's consciousness and replace it. That was why Lei Haoyan was so flustered. At first, when he was first separated, he was Ling Shiqi's consciousness. But after a long time, Lei Haoyan slowly gained his own independent consciousness. This was especially so when he was sitting on the throne of the Thunderflame dynasty. It could be said that he could summon the wind and summon the rain. Naturally, he was unwilling to continue being a puppet and a spare tire that could be replaced at any time. Ling Shiqi's death made Lei Haoyan unable to sit still. He immediately ran into the dragon vein to find Old Man Qiao. He hoped that in this special place and under the protection of a Tongxian realm expert, Ling Shiqi would not take over his body. The old beggar of the Starfall dynasty sighed deeply and continued to eat his steamed bun, but it tasted like wax. Dark clouds covered the East Sea. There seemed to be dragons soaring in the sky, but then they disappeared. In the depths of the blood beast sex blood prison, the fear in the eyes of the venerable beast deepened. In the Western Wasteland King's mansion, Oziu's expression was lonely. In the end, he still couldn't escape his fate. Meng Tianzong's expression was grave. He really failed. With his strength, he might not even be able to pass the Tongxian tribulation. Under the Heavenly Slayer tribulation, only death awaits him. Strange, how did he trigger the Heavenly Slayer tribulation? Even if the Netherworld Saint Lord reincarnated, he should have rested and made more preparations. What happened? Unfortunately, she no longer had the chance to find out. At this time, Ling Shiqi was very uncomfortable. He had lost his physical body, his soul, and all his cultivation. Only a wisp of his soul was left. He knew that with his strength, in front of the giant eye, even if he had countless lives, it would be a dead end. Since he was going to die, he might as well fight. Of course, he didn't want to fight the giant eye. He didn't have the strength or qualifications. He thought that since Meng Tianzong could survive, it meant that the heavens wasn't omnipotent. So before he died, he used 2 lives to draw out a large amount of blood essence and then fused it into a drop of true blood. In the end, Ling Shiqi used all his resources to exchange for a secret technique from the system space, blood reincarnation. This was a god-level secret technique that could theoretically allow unlimited rebirth. He didn't have enough resources and could only exchange for a one-time use. Moreover, he knew that even if he was reborn, he would still die, so he hid a wisp of his soul in the true blood. Then he gave up on rebirth and used that power to travel through the spatial turbulence. He originally planned to escape the giant eye's detection and enter the underworld, then find a way to rebuild his physical body. Unfortunately, he couldn't open the underworld in his soul state. In the past, entering and exiting the underworld required a certain amount of spiritual power. The strength was very small, so he didn't notice. Now that he tried, he found that he didn't have the spiritual power to teleport to the underworld. This showed how weak he was at this time. Even if this path didn't work, there was another way. He just didn't know how long he could hold on. At first, it was fine, but as the power of blood reincarnation slowly weakened, Ling Shiqi only felt that he was getting colder and colder. Although he didn't have a body, the soul-freezing cold was even more terrifying. He couldn't see anything around him, only endless darkness. He was like a lonely ghost drifting aimlessly in the air. However, he wasn't really without a purpose. There was a force guiding him, as if as long as he followed it, he would be able to get out of his current predicament. Gradually, he seemed to see a glimmer of light. It was a very familiar soul power that came from the same source. A strong hope appeared in his heart. Ling Shiqi also guessed that it must be his soul avatar. As long as he got close, he could revive through his soul avatar. However, a few strands of golden light suddenly surrounded the light, and then it began to slowly move away. No matter how hard Ling Shiqi chased, he couldn't catch up. Ling Shiqi's heart sank. That must be the soul avatar using some method to protect him. He wanted to continue chasing, but the power of blood reincarnation was about to be exhausted. Once he lost the protection of this power, forget about reviving, his last trace of soul would immediately disappear. Just as he was about to despair, a faint blood-red light appeared in the cave not far away. Strangely, that blood-red light also gave Ling Shiqi a sense of homogeneity. He didn't have time to think, and immediately used all his strength to get close to that blood-red light. In the Northern Wei Dynasty's Wei capital, in a secret room of the Thunderstorm Dynasty's inn, Delta Origi was struggling to cast a spell. There were 5 blood-red figures around her. 4 of them were like guards guarding the 4 corners of the secret room. A blood-red shadow was slowly forming in front of her. It was the blood-red shadow condensed from Ling Shiqi's blood essence. Delta Origi had tried countless times, but every time she was about to form, she would fail. She had tried everything, but it was still useless. Logically speaking, all the conditions for forming a blood-red shadow were met, and she should have succeeded long ago. However, Delta Origi didn't give up. The more it was like this, the more it meant that the blood-red shadow formed from Ling Shiqi's blood essence would be extraordinary. If it succeeded, it would definitely give her a great surprise. Therefore, she didn't give up. Taking advantage of the fact that she hadn't returned to the Thunderstorm Dynasty, she continued to study her blood-red shadow secret technique. At this moment, the blood-red shadow's body was complete, and its facial features were clearer. Only a pair of eyes were left, which were still incomparably empty. Delta Origi didn't have any strength left. In the past, she would always fail at this step, causing all her efforts to go to waste. In fact, her blood-red shadow didn't need any consciousness. She only needed to split her attention to control the blood-red shadow. As expected, the blood-red shadow immediately showed signs of collapsing. Delta Origi sighed in her heart. She was going to fail again. All of a sudden, Delta Origi suddenly felt a sharp pain in her heart for no reason, as if she had lost something. However, that feeling hadn't dissipated yet, and she was shocked to find that the blood-red shadow in front of her had actually condensed again. Especially that pair of eyes, there was actually a strong sense of surprise and fear in them. Delta Origi was a little confused by the series of unforeseen events. Who would have thought that the blood-red shadow would speak again? She said in surprise, "Xiao Gu." Chapter 874. Underground, dozens of kilometers away from the Wei capital, 3 black-robed men were still maintaining an array formation. A skull was spinning around. Following that, there was a crisp cracking sound as a crack suddenly appeared on the skull. The trio was alarmed as they turned pale with fright. How can this be? One of them roared, filled with horror and panic. The other 2 immediately knelt on the ground and shouted, "Sacred Lord, please forgive us. Sacred Lord, please spare our lives." Phew. 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 A ghostly aura floated out from the skull, condensing into a blurry human figure. Only a pair of eyes could be seen. One was as dark as the netherworld, while the other was as resplendent as the stars. This person's eyes were filled with boundless fury as he roared, "Why did I set up the trap so much earlier? The item in the Archean Aeon realm has already vanished. The body that I have nurtured for 10,000 years has also been destroyed. Who disrupted this sovereign's plan? We don't know. We don't know." The trio trembled as they kowtowed. So this phantom was Sacred Lord Netherworld. After 10,000 years of planning, such an unforeseen event occurred just as I was about to succeed in my reincarnation. Could it be that I am destined to have no fate with the Holy Domain? Sacred Lord Netherworld suddenly felt somewhat lonely. Sacred Lord's divine powers are unparalleled. Seeing Sacred Lord Netherworld's attitude change, the trio immediately began to flatter him. Sacred Lord Netherworld fell silent as his fingers trembled. It was unknown what he was doing. The trio opened their mouths but did not continue speaking. After a long while, Sacred Lord Netherworld took the initiative to pause as a strange glint flashed in his eyes. It seems like there is still a chance for a turnaround. Unfortunately, it has to come to that. Lord of Samsara, what I have done all these years might have been wrong. The three of them were confused. Who was the master of Samsara? I don't have a body. It is inconvenient for me to do certain things. The three of you will have to sacrifice your lives. Just as Sacred Lord Netherworld finished speaking, he ignored the trio's pleas. With a wave of his hand, the trio turned into a pool of black water that was eventually absorbed by Sacred Lord Netherworld. His body also became much more corporeal. He looked left and right before disappearing from his original spot. On the other side, Delta Origi saw that the blood shadow was speaking in human language, and from the tone and gaze, it was clearly Leng Shiqi himself. For a moment, Delta Origi was a little dazed. She thought that she had accidentally caused Blood Shadow to gain consciousness. However, the Blood Shadow continued, I am the Leng Shiqi. Now, I only have a remnant soul left. I don't know why I am attached to the Blood Shadow. Fortunately, I have Blood Shadow. Otherwise, this remnant soul of mine would have been completely destroyed. At this point, he could not help but feel a little scared, and the Delta Origi could not help but be shocked when they heard this. Didn't you go to the Ashen Essence realm? How did it become like this? Delta Origi asked in disbelief. As far as she knew, Leng Shiqi was always able to face any kind of predicament and escape unscathed. Entering the Ashen Essence realm was clearly a great opportunity, so how did he end up in such a state? It's a long story. Leng Shiqi roughly explained what had happened in the Ashen Essence realm. He told her the first half of the story truthfully, including the fact that Meng Tian was Meng Tianzong and that he had the bloodline of the Astral race and the Dark Shadow race. However, he changed the second half of the story slightly. He only said that he had encountered a spatial storm and had risked his life to escape with a remnant soul. He did not mention anything about the heavenly tribulation, the giant eye, and the Nether Lord. It was not because he wanted to hide it, but because he felt that not only would it not benefit Delta Origi, but it would also harm her. If Delta Origi knew that she would have to face the heavenly tribulation and the invincible giant eye if she continued cultivating, it would only cause a knot in her heart, and it might even evolve into a mental demon. It would be detrimental to her cultivation. Leng Shiqi planned to wait until Delta Origi broke through to the heavenly origin realm or even the mystic enlightening realm in the future. I didn't expect such a huge change in the Ashen Essence realm. I've seen Meng Tian from the Myriad Laws sect a few times. Who would have thought that she was the Heaven Ascension realm expert from 10,000 years ago? Even though it was only the first half of the story, it had a great impact on Delta Origi. She then frowned. Your body has been destroyed, and your soul has been destroyed. Your cultivation no longer exists. What you need to do now is to recover your cultivation as soon as possible. Otherwise, when the news of your death spreads, the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion will definitely be in chaos. Don't forget that there were many people who opposed you being conferred the title of king. Moreover, you are so powerful in the Western Wilderness Prefecture. There are many people in the imperial capital who can't stand you. Delta Origi was right. Leng Shiqi did not seem to have many enemies on the surface, but there were countless people who wanted to ruin his reputation and kill him. Once Xian Haoying and the others came out and announced his death, the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion would be the first to bear the brunt. Many people would definitely target them for revenge. Although Leng Shiqi was not dead, he was only left with a remnant soul. He did not even have a real body. If he dared to show his face and say that he was still alive, he was afraid that a large number of his enemies would immediately destroy this last remnant of his soul. Therefore, his top priority was to find a way to recover his cultivation. You're right. Fortunately, I can temporarily attach myself to this blood shadow. I'll stay by your side during this period of time. Help me find some heaven and earth treasures that can nourish the soul. Only by stabilizing my soul power can I enter the underworld. Then, my life will not be in danger, Ling Shiqi agreed. Delta Orgi immediately took out a green lantern from her mustard seed bracelet. This thing is called the Netherworld Lantern. I obtained it from exterminating an evil sect. It's a 7th grade treasure. I took it because it's not very useful. I can give it to you. The moment the Netherworld Lantern appeared, Ling Shiqi felt an extremely warm feeling. His body flashed, and the blood shadow instantly shrank before entering the Netherworld Lantern. Phew, this thing isn't bad. It can repair my soul power very quickly. I estimate that it will take about half a month to regrow my psyche power. Ling Shiqi secretly heaved a sigh of relief and continued, as for the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion, there's no need to worry for the time being. First of all, even if Xian Haoyin returns, he might not announce my death directly because he hasn't entered the real Tsingyuan realm. Even if I don't return, I'll at most go missing. Prepare for the worst. If news of my death spreads, there's no need to worry about the people in the royal capital for the time being. Someone will help me protect the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion. Although it won't be for long, it'll be enough to stall for some time. Delta Origi understood. The only thing she was puzzled about was who the person Ling Shiqi was talking about was. After news of Ling Shiqi's death spread, the number of people who could protect the Western Wilderness Monarch's mansion could be counted on one hand in the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, she didn't ask any further. Recuperate here. You should be able to find some soul-nourishing treasures in Wei capital. I'll go find some. Okay, sorry to trouble you. Delta Origi walked out of the chamber, feeling wistful. This time, Ling Shiqi had met with a calamity. It was naturally very difficult for Gu San to accept, but now she could finally do something for Ling Shiqi. You're tuning into the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.